Hey guys, how are you all? I hope you all are doing well. Today we are gonna see an amazing what if story, but before we start, it's just a humble request that if you are new here, please subscribe because it actually motivates me a lot to post more. Also, the stories on my channel are fully written by me, so if you have any suggestions for what if stories, please let me know below the comment section. Now without any further delay, let's start. What if Harry Potter inherited Santa Claus's power? The thermometer on the kitchen wall read 28 degrees Celsius. July in Surrey meant sunburnt lawns and ice cream vans and children shrieking in paddling pools up and down Privet Drive. Inside number 4, Petunia Dursley could see her breath. She stood at the kitchen counter, her fingers wrapped around a mug of tea that had gone cold within seconds of pouring. Not room temperature cold, properly cold. The kind of cold that made the ceramic hurt to touch. Vernon sat at the breakfast table in his winter coat, the heavy wool one he wore to football matches in December. Sweat beaded on his forehead from the effort of wearing it, but he refused to take it off. His mustache had actual frost on it. "This is mental," Dudley said through chattering teeth. He was wearing 3 jumpers, a scarf, and mittens. "In July, I'm going to die. I'm actually going to die in my own kitchen." "Don't be dramatic, Dudders." Petunia's voice came out shaky. "It's just, the air conditioning must be broken." "We don't have air conditioning, Mum." Then she trailed off because there was no explanation. There hadn't been an explanation for 3 years now. Not since the boy turned 8 and the temperature in the house started dropping. Harry Potter walked into the kitchen. The temperature dropped another 5 degrees. Vernon flinched. Actually flinched, like a grown man recoiling from a spider. His chair scraped back against the tiles as he pressed himself against the wall. "Morning," Harry said. His voice was quiet. It always was, these days. He'd learned that speaking too loudly made people nervous. He was small for 11. Skinny in a way that made his second-hand clothes hang off him like rags. His hair was black and stuck up in every direction, and behind his round glasses, his green eyes held something that none of the Dursleys could look at directly anymore. His skin had a shimmer to it. Faint, almost invisible unless you caught it in the right light. Like frost on a window pane, except the frost was under his skin, part of him. "Get your breakfast and get out," Vernon said. His voice cracked on the last word. Harry nodded. He was used to this. 3 years of being treated like a bomb that might go off at any moment. 3 years of his aunt and uncle and cousin keeping their distance, speaking to him only when necessary, never touching him. He understood why. The first time Dudley had tried to push him down the stairs, Dudley's hand had come away with frostbite. Actual frostbite. The doctors had been baffled. His cousin still had the scars. Harry grabbed a piece of toast from the counter. The butter on it froze. Solid the moment his fingers touched the plate. "Sorry," he mumbled, though he wasn't sure why he was apologizing. He couldn't help it. Whatever was inside him, whatever made him this way, he'd never asked for it. He took his frozen toast and walked toward the back door, heading for the garden. Behind him, he heard Petunia let out a long breath, and the kitchen temperature immediately began to climb back toward something survivable. Outside, the July sun hit him like a wall. He could feel it trying to warm his skin, but it was fighting a losing battle. His body ran cold now. Had for years. Not uncomfortable cold, not to him. He didn't shiver or feel the chill. But everyone around him did. He sat down on the back step and bit into his toast. Still frozen solid. He ate it anyway. It didn't taste any different to him. Mrs. Number 6 was hanging laundry in her garden. She glanced over the fence, saw Harry, and immediately went back inside. Her clothesline was covered in ice crystals now. They'd melt in an hour and she'd blame it on the morning dew. Harry was used to this too. He finished his toast and stared at the sky. Bright blue. Not a cloud in sight. Perfect summer weather for everyone except him. Something was different today. He'd felt it when he woke up. A pressure in his chest, like something building. Like the moment before a sneeze that never comes. He'd had feelings like this before. Usually right before something strange happened. Right before windows frosted over or puddles turned to ice or Dudley's shoelaces mysteriously froze together mid-step. This felt bigger. A bird landed on the fence. Then another. Then 5 more. They were all staring at him. Robins with their red breasts puffed out, tiny black eyes fixed on his face like they were waiting for something. "Shoo," Harry said. The birds didn't move. "I haven't got any food." Still nothing. One of them opened its beak and made a sound that wasn't quite a chirp. It was higher, sharper, almost like singing. The others joined in, and for a moment the air was filled with this strange, high melody that made the pressure in Harry's chest tighten. Then they flew away, all at once, like someone had given a signal. Harry sat very still. His heart was beating faster now, which was unusual. He ran cold, but he usually felt calm. Detached, like he was watching everything from behind a pane of glass. Not today. Today something was coming. He could feel it. The owl arrived at exactly 11 in the morning. Harry was in his cupboard under the stairs, lying on his thin mattress and staring at the ceiling. The Dursleys had sent him to his room after Mrs. Number 6 complained that her entire garden had frosted over. Vernon had shouted something about freakishness and property values and keeping out of sight. So here he was, in the dark, listening to Dudley's television blaring through the floor above him. The scratching at the window made him sit up. Except there was no window in his cupboard. Just walls and a door in the dusty dark. The scratching came again, louder, more insistent. Harry reached for the door handle. It was coated in ice, his ice, the cold that seeped out of him when he was stressed or scared or just existing. He twisted it and pushed. The hallway was empty. The scratching was coming from the front door. He walked toward it, his bare feet leaving frost patterns on the carpet. The sound grew louder as he approached. Not scratching, he realized. Tapping. Something was tapping on the letterbox. Harry pulled open the door. The owl was white, pure white, and it wasn't made of feathers and flesh and bone. It was made of snow. Harry stared at it. The owl stared back. Its eyes were chips of ice, pale blue and glittering. Its body was packed snow, dense and smooth, head into wings and a curved beak and talons that gripped the doorstep like they were carved from marble. "What?" Harry said. The owl lifted one leg. There was a letter tied to it, cream-colored paper sealed with red wax. Harry reached out. The moment his fingers touched the owl, it exploded. Not violently, not dangerously. It just came apart, dissolving into a flurry of snowflakes that swirled around him in a spiral. The letter dropped into his hands, cold and dry, and the snowflakes settled on his shoulders and in his hair before melting into nothing. Harry was left standing in the doorway holding an envelope addressed to him. Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. He turned it over. The seal showed a coat of arms he didn't recognize. A lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake surrounding a large letter H. The pressure in his chest spiked. His head exploded. Not literally, not physically, but something inside his skull cracked open, and suddenly, he wasn't just Harry Potter standing in a doorway in Surrey. He was everywhere. He was everyone. Mrs. Number 6 wanted her husband to stop drinking. Mr. Polkiss down the street wanted a promotion at work. The little girl in number 12 wanted her father to come home from wherever fathers went when they left. The old man in the corner house wanted the pain in his joints to stop, just for one day. Just long enough to walk his dog properly. Harry gasped. His knees buckled. The letter crumpled in his fist as he grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. Wants, desires, needs. They poured into him like water into a cup. And the cup was overflowing, and he couldn't stop it, couldn't block it, couldn't do anything but stand there and drown in the desperate yearning of every person within a mile of where he stood. The teenage boy 3 streets over wanted to kiss the girl in his chemistry class. The mother at the bus stop wanted her baby to stop crying. The businessman in his car wanted to be anywhere except on his way to work. The homeless man behind the shopping center wanted something warm to eat. Warm, food, need, something snapped. Harry's hand moved without his permission. He picked up a pebble from the doorstep. Smooth and gray and ordinary, and he thought about gold. About weight and warmth and value. About giving. The pebble turned. It wasn't a gradual transformation. One moment it was stone. The next it was metal. Heavy, gleaming, perfectly formed. A gold coin the size of his palm, stamped with a design he'd never seen before. A sleigh pulled by reindeer. Harry's arm drew back, his hand released. The coin flew through the air in a perfect arc, over the hedge, over the fence, across the road, and through the open window of the Polkis house 3 doors down. The voices in his head went quiet. Just for a moment, just long enough for him to breathe. Then the migraine hit. Harry collapsed. He didn't remember falling, but suddenly he was on the floor of the hallway. Curled up with his head between his knees, tears streaming down his face. The cold poured out of him in waves, frost spreading across the carpet and up the walls and over the ceiling. The temperature in the house dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Somewhere upstairs, Dudley started screaming about the cold. Vernon was shouting. Petunia was crying. Harry couldn't move. The voices were back, quieter now but still there. A constant hum of want and need and please 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 at the back of his skull. He pressed his hands over his ears but it didn't help. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside him now. The letter was still clutched in his frozen fingers. He opened it with shaking hands, because what else was there to do? What else could possibly make this day any stranger? Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Harry laughed. It came out broken and wet and slightly hysterical. Magic. Wizards. Of course. Why not? He read the rest of the letter through blurred vision. A list of required equipment. A train ticket. Instructions for reaching a platform that apparently didn't exist. Term begins on September 1st. Harry looked at the date. 2 months away. 2 months of living in this house with the constant cold and the Dursleys, terror and these new voices in his head telling him what everyone wanted. He couldn't do it. He couldn't stay here another day, let alone 2 months. There was a fireplace in the living room. The Dursleys never used it, had actually boarded it up years ago aft. Vernon decided the draft was bad for Dudley's health. But Harry could feel it now, feel it in a way he'd never felt anything before. It was calling to him. Like a doorway waiting to be opened. He got to his feet. His legs were unsteady but they held. The frost on the walls followed him as he walked, spreading and creeping like a living thing. Vernon appeared at the top of the stairs. What did you do? What the bloody hell did you do to my house? I'm leaving, Harry said. You can't just. Where do you think you're going? Who's going to? You can't. I'm going to Hogwarts. Harry walked into the living room. The boarded-up fireplace stood against the far wall, planks of wood nailed across the opening in a cross pattern. He raised his hand and thought about cold. About ice. About things becoming brittle and breaking. The wood shattered. Not dramatically. Not with a bang or a crack. It just fell apart, pieces dropping to the floor like autumn leaves, revealing the dark opening of the chimney behind them. Vernon was in the doorway now. You stop right there. You listen to me. I don't know what you're playing at, but you're not going anywhere. You belong to us and you'll do as you're told then. Harry stepped into the fireplace. The world turned inside out. He was falling and flying and freezing all at once. The darkness of the chimney wasn't darkness at all, it was something else, a space between spaces. A tunnel made of soot and snow and starlight. He could feel connections branching out in every direction, thousands of them, millions, every hearth and fireplace and chimney in the world linked together in a web that he somehow understood without ever learning. He thought about the letter. About Hogwarts. About a school for magic that was apparently real. The web responded. He felt himself pulled in a direction that wasn't up or down or sideways. He felt cold wind and ancient stone and the weight of centuries of accumulated belief. He felt green and silver and candlelight and the smell of the lake. Then he was falling for real, tumbling out of a fireplace and onto cold stone floor, and the soot in his lungs made him cough so hard he thought he might die. Ari lay on his back and stared at the ceiling. Stone. Carved stone. Gray and old, with green-tinged shadows cast by torches burning in wall sconces. The ceiling was low, arched, and he could hear water somewhere close by. The gentle lap of waves against rock. He sat up slowly. His head was pounding. The voices were still there, fainter now but present, a background hum of needs and wants that he was beginning to think might never go away. The room he'd landed in was some kind of common area. Leather sofas and chairs in dark green. Tables covered in books and parchment. Tapestries on the walls showing serpents and silver crests. Everything had a slightly underwater quality, the light filtering through tall windows that looked out onto murky green water. He was in a dungeon. Underground. Looking out at the bottom of a lake. What the hell? Harry spun around. A girl was standing by one of the sofas. She was about his age, maybe a bit older, with blonde hair pulled back in a severe braid. And eyes that were so pale they were almost colorless. She was wearing what looked like a school uniform, a white shirt and gray skirt and a tie striped with green and silver. She was staring at him like he'd grown a second head. Harry tried to find words. I don't. You just fell out of our fireplace. The girl's voice was flat, controlled, but there was an edge underneath it, something sharp waiting to cut. The Slytherin common room fireplace, which is supposed to be warded against exactly this kind of thing. I don't know how I got here. Obviously. She took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. You're covered in soot. And frost. How are you covered in frost? It's the middle of July. Harry looked down at himself. She was right. His clothes were black with chimney soot and white with ice crystals. His skin was doing the shimmer thing again, more obvious now than it had ever been. I don't know, he said. His voice cracked. He sounded pathetic and he knew it. I was at home and then I stepped into the fireplace and then I was here. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. The girl didn't respond right away. She was studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable, her pale eyes moving over his face like she was cataloging every detail. Then she tilted her head. You're Harry Potter. It wasn't a question. How do you know my name? The scar. She pointed to his forehead. Everyone knows about the scar. Harry touched his forehead automatically. The lightning bolt shape he'd had since before he could remember. The Dursleys had told him he'd got it in the car crash that killed his parents. But they'd been wrong about a lot of things. What scar? What's everyone know? The girl's expression shifted, just slightly. A flicker of something that might have been surprise, quickly controlled. You don't know. Know what? Anything, apparently. She walked past him to the fireplace, examining the grate. No soot there, Harry noticed. The fire wasn't burning, hadn't been for months by the look of it. But there was no sign he'd come through. Like he'd just appeared from thin air. My name is Daphne Greengrass, the girl said without looking at him. I'm a second year. You shouldn't be here. First years take the train. I got a letter this morning. From Hogwarts. And then, Harry stopped. He didn't know how to explain the rest of it. The owl made of snow. The voices in his head. The gold coin. The way the fireplace had felt like a door waiting to be opened. Daphne turned back to face him. Her expression was unreadable now, smoothed into careful neutrality. But Harry noticed something strange. She was quiet, not just not speaking, quiet in a way that no one else had been since the letter arrived. The hum of wants and needs and desires that had been buzzing in his skull since the snow owl touched his hand, it went silent around her. Like she was a gap in the noise. A space where the pressure stopped. He could breathe around her. You're different, he said without thinking. Daphne's eyes narrowed. Excuse me, I can't hear you. Harry shook his head. That sounds mad. I mean, since this morning, I've been able to feel what people want. Everyone. All the time. It's like they're shouting at me inside my head. But you're quiet. I can't feel anything from you. For a long moment, Daphne didn't move. She just stared at him with those pale eyes. And Harry couldn't tell if she was about to hex him or call for help or both. Then she said, sit down. Harry sat, not on the sofa, on the floor, because his legs gave out before he could make it that far. Daphne raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. She walked over to one of the tables, picked up a book, set it down again, and then turned back to him with her arms crossed. You said you can feel what people want. Yeah, everyone. Everyone except you. And this started this morning. When I touched the letter. Or the owl. I'm not sure which. Daphne's jaw tightened. Describe the owl. It was made of snow. Actual snow. Like someone had packed it together and shaped it into a bird. It fell apart when I touched it. Something flickered across Daphne's face. That's not possible. I know. There's no magic that works like that. Not in any book I've ever read. I know. And you created gold. Actual gold. Harry stared at her. How did you? I didn't say anything about gold. Daphne went very still. You didn't. No. Then how did I? She trailed off. Her hand moved to her temple, pressing against it like she had a headache. That's strange. I could have sworn you mentioned. You felt it. Harry didn't know how he knew, but he was certain. You felt me make the coin. Like I felt everyone's wants. That's not possible, Daphne said again, but there was less conviction this time. None of this is possible. But it's happening anyway. They stared at each other across the cold stone room. Harry could feel his heart pounding, could feel the frost spreading under his fingers where they pressed against the floor. The pressure in his chest was building again, that feeling like something was about to break. Daphne broke the silence first. You need to talk to the headmaster. Who? Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore. He runs Hogwarts. If anyone knows what's happening to you, he will. Can you take me to him? She hesitated. Harry watched her face, watched the way her expression stayed perfectly controlled even as something shifted behind her eyes. Calculation, he thought. She was weighing options, deciding how much to involve herself. Why should I help you? She asked finally. Because I can't hear you. Harry wasn't sure why that mattered, but it felt important. Everyone else is so loud. Everyone else wants things from me, even if they don't know it. But you're just you. And right now, that's the only thing keeping me from losing my mind. Daphne's expression didn't change, but after a moment, she nodded. Come with me, Sheila. Him through a door hidden behind one of the tapestries, up a narrow staircase that spiraled upward through the stone. The walls were damp and cold, though Harry suspected he was making them colder. Daphne walked ahead of him without looking back, her posture perfectly straight, her steps sure and practiced. The voices crept back as they climbed. Fainter than before, distant, but there. A house E.L.F. in the kitchens wishing for more time to prepare dinner. A ghost in a corridor longing to feel warmth again. A professor grading papers and desperately wanting a cup of tea. Small wants, manageable, but they were all there. A constant pressure against the inside of his skull. How long have you been at this school? Harry asked, partly to distract himself. 1 year. I'm starting my second in September. Is it? What's it like? Daphne glanced back at him. Just a quick look, assessing. It's a school. That's not really an answer. It's the answer I'm giving. She turned back to the stairs. You'll find out for yourself soon enough. They emerged into a corridor that looked nothing like the dungeon they'd left. Tall windows letting in actual sunlight. Stone walls hung with portraits that moved and whispered as they passed. Suits of armor standing in alcoves, their helmets turning to follow Harry's progress. He was in a castle. An actual castle, and somehow that was the least strange thing that had happened today. Greengrass. What are you doing here during the summer? The voice came from behind them. Harry turned to see an old man walking toward them down the corridor. Tall, thin, wearing robes that seemed to be made of midnight and starlight. His beard was silver and reached nearly to his waist, and his eyes, behind half-moon spectacles, were the most unsettling shade of blue Harry had ever seen. Daphne had gone stiff beside him. Headmaster, I was using the library. My family has special access during the holidays. Ah, yes, the Greengrass dedication to academic pursuits. The old man's eyes had moved to Harry now, and they hadn't left. And who is this? Harry opened his mouth to answer but nothing came out. The pressure in his chest was worse now, much worse. Because this man wanted something and it wasn't small. It wasn't tea or time or relief from pain. It was vast and complicated and tangled up in fear and hope and something that felt a lot like grief. This man wanted to save the world. And he was terrified he couldn't. Harry Potter, Daphne said when Harry didn't speak. He came through the Slytherin fireplace. Said an owl made of snow delivered his Hogwarts letter this morning. Dumbledore's face didn't change, not exactly, but something behind his eyes shifted, and suddenly Harry felt like a specimen under glass. An owl made of snow, the headmaster repeated. That's what he said, and the fireplace simply let him through. Through the wards. I don't know how, Harry managed. His voice came out thin and strained. I didn't mean to end up here. I just wanted to leave. I thought about the letter and the fireplace felt like a door and I walked through in. And you found yourself in the Slytherin common room. Dumbledore was nodding slowly, but Harry couldn't tell if he was understanding or just processing. Fascinating. He can hear thoughts, Daphne said. Harry shot her a look. She ignored it. Not thoughts exactly, he said quickly. Wants. Desires. What people need. He swallowed hard. You want to save everyone. And you're scared you can't. The silence that followed was absolute. Dumbledore's face went blank. Not controlled like Daphne's. Not carefully neutral. Blank. Empty. Like a wall had come down behind his eyes. Then he smiled, and the smile didn't reach anywhere near those terrible blue eyes. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation in my office," he said. "Miss Greengrass, you are excused." "No." Harry stepped closer to Daphne without thinking about it. The cold radiating off him intensified. Frost spreading across the floor in a circle around his feet. "She stays." Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Potter, she's the only person I've met since this morning who doesn't feel like a scream inside my head. Everyone else wants things and I can feel all of it and it hurts and I can't think. But she's quiet, she helps." Harry's hands were shaking. "Please, just let her stay." The headmaster studied him for a long moment. Then his gaze moved to Daphne, who hadn't moved, hadn't reacted, hadn't given any sign that she cared either way about being used as Harry's emotional support blanket. "Miss Greengrass," he asked, "do you have any objections?" Daphne's expression remained perfectly neutral. "None, headmaster." "Very well." Dumbledore turned and began walking down the corridor. "Follow me, both of you." They walked in silence through twisting corridors and up spiral staircases. Harry tried to focus on his breathing, on the cold stone under his feet, on anything except the constant hum of wants and needs that pressed against his skull. It was easier with Daphne beside him. Her silence created a buffer, a space where he could think. The headmaster's office was behind a gargoyle statue that leapt aside when Dumbledore spoke a word Harry didn't catch. The room beyond was circular and cluttered, filled with strange silver instruments that whirred and puffed smoke. And the walls were covered in portraits of sleeping witches and wizards. Harry stopped in the doorway. There was something in this room. Something that sang to him like the fireplace had, like the chimney network. Like the owl made of snow. An object of power calling out to be found. He walked forward without thinking, past Dumbledore's desk, past the perch where a red and gold bird was watching him with intelligent eyes. To a shelf in the corner where a dozen ordinary-looking objects sat in a row. His hand reached out. "Mr. Potter, I wouldn't." Harry's fingers closed around a small wooden toy. A soldier, painted in faded colors, its eyes dark and blank. The room went cold. Not Harry's cold, not the chill that followed him everywhere. This was something else. Something ancient and hungry and very, very patient. The soldier whispered in his hand. "The shadow wakes." Harry dropped it. The toy hit the floor with a clatter that seemed too loud in the silent room. "What?" he said. "What is that? What does it mean?" Dumbledore was standing very still. His face had lost all color. "I think, Mr. Potter," he said slowly, "that we have a great deal to discuss." But Harry barely heard him. He was staring at the wooden soldier on the floor. At the way its painted eyes seemed to follow him. At the smell of sulfur that clung to his fingers where he'd touched it. Something was coming. Something old. Something that had been waiting a very, very long time. And Harry Potter, standing in a castle he'd never seen before, covered in soot and frost and fear, had absolutely no idea what to do about it. The bird on the perch let out a low, mournful trill. Outside the window, the summer sun kept shining. And somewhere in the depths of the earth, in the places where the old things slept, something stirred. Something smiled. The season was changing. 2 months felt like 2 years. Harry spent most of August in a small room at the top of a tower that Dumbledore called temporary accommodation. It had a bed, a desk, a window overlooking the lake, and absolutely nothing else. The house elves brought him food 3 times a day and refused to make eye contact when they did. He wasn't a prisoner. Dumbledore had made that very clear. He was free to wander the castle, explore the grounds, use the library. But he wasn't allowed to leave, and owls carrying letters to the outside world had a funny habit of getting lost somewhere between his window and wherever they were supposed to go. "For your safety," Dumbledore had said. "Until we understand more about your condition." Harry had stopped arguing after the first week. What was the point? He didn't have anywhere else to go. The voices helped pass the time, in a horrible sort of way. He was getting better at filtering them. The wants and needs of the castle's summer occupants, the handful of professors and staff who stayed year-round, had become a kind of background noise. Like static on a radio. He could tune it out if he concentrated. Mostly. The 1st of September arrived with gray skies and the distant rumble of thunder. Harry stood at his window and watched the carriages roll up the path from the gates. Hundreds of students pouring out, laughing and shouting and pushing each other. First years looking terrified, older students looking bored, all of them radiating wants so loudly that Harry had to grip the windowsill to keep from falling over. New brooms. Better marks. That girl to notice me. That boy to leave me alone. My parents to be proud. My sister to stop being so annoying. Food, sleep, friends, love, recognition. The noise was staggering. Harry closed his eyes and breathed. In through his nose, out through his mouth. The technique Daphne had taught him over their awkward summer meetings in the library. Build a wall of ice in your mind. Let the voices hit it and freeze. Don't try to block them, just slow them down until they're manageable. It helped. A little. Mr. Potter. He turned. Professor McGonagall stood in his doorway. Her expression as severe as it had been every other time he'd seen her. She was the deputy headmistress, apparently. Also the Transfiguration teacher. Also deeply suspicious of everything about him. The sorting will begin in an hour, she said. The headmaster thought you might want to observe. Will I be sorted? You're a first year. Of course you'll be sorted. Harry nodded. He'd read about the houses in a book Daphne had lent him. Gryffindor for the brave, Ravenclaw for the clever, Hufflepuff for the loyal, Slytherin for the ambitious. He had no idea which one fit him. He wasn't sure any of them did. I'll be down soon, he said. McGonagall lingered in the doorway for a moment, studying him with sharp eyes. The other students will have questions about you, Mr. Potter. Many of them have grown up hearing stories. Stories about what? She didn't answer, just pressed her lips together and walked away. Harry turned back to the window. The carriages were still coming. An endless stream of them, and the noise in his head was getting worse. He thought about ice, about walls, about silence. It didn't help as much as he'd hoped. The great hall was overwhelming. Harry stood in the entrance and stared at 4 long tables packed with students, at a ceiling that showed the stormy sky outside, at floating candles and golden plates and the combined ment. Al screaming of several hundred teenagers who all wanted something right now. His knees buckled. A hand caught his elbow. Daphne, appearing from nowhere, her grip firm and her face blank. Breathe, she said quietly. Focus on my voice. Just my voice. Harry closed his eyes. Her silence was there, that blessed emptiness where the noise couldn't reach. He held onto it like a drowning man grabbing a rope. Better? She asked after a moment. Yeah. He straightened up. Thanks. Don't mention it. She let go of his arm and stepped back. Literally. Don't mention it to anyone. I have a reputation to maintain. She walked away before he could respond, heading toward the table on the far left. The Slytherin table. She sat down next to a dark-haired girl and a blonde boy who looked like he'd smelled something unpleasant. Harry was left standing alone in the entrance. First years, this way. A massive man with a wild beard was herding a group of terrified 11-year-olds toward the front of the hall. Harry joined them, trying to look like he belonged. The other first years gave him strange looks. Some of them whispered to each other. As that, the scar, look at the scar. Harry Potter, it can't be, he's just a kid. Quote, Harry ignored them. The noise in his head was bad enough without adding actual spoken gossip to the mix. The Sorting Hat was exactly as stupid as the book had described. An old, patched, raggedy thing that sat on a stool and sang a song about the 4 houses before being placed on students' heads one by one. Harry watched as Abbott, Hannah became a Hufflepuff. Bones, Susan joined her. Boot, Terry went to Ravenclaw. The names blurred together. The noise in his head pulsed with every new sorting, every burst of applause, every surge of hope or disappointment from the watching crowd. Granger, Hermione, a girl with bushy brown hair practically ran to the stool. She jammed the hat on her head before McGonagall could do it for her. There was a long pause, and then the hat shouted, Gryffindor. And the girl beamed like she'd won the lottery. More names, more houses. The blonde boy from the Slytherin table had a son, apparently. Malfoy, Draco, he was ordered into Slytherin before the hat even touched his head. Potter, Harry. The hall went silent. Not quiet, silent. Every voice, mental and physical, stopped at once. Harry walked to the stool. His footsteps echoed in the sudden stillness. He could feel every eye in the room on him, could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down like a physical force. He sat. McGonagall placed the hat on his head. And the world went white. Cold, so cold. A voice in the darkness, ancient and amused. Well, what do we have here? Harry couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The hat was inside his mind, rifling through his thoughts like pages in a book, and everywhere it touched turned to ice. Interesting. Very interesting. You're not what I expected, Harry Potter. What do you mean? The silence around you. The cold. This isn't wizard magic, boy. This is something much older. I don't understand. No, you don't. But you will. The hat paused. Harry felt it considering, weighing options, examining possibilities. You could be great. You know. Any house would be lucky to have you. Gryffindor would give you courage to face what's coming. Ravenclaw would give you knowledge to understand it. Slytherin would give you cunning to survive it. Hufflepuff would give you friends to share the burden. What's coming? The hat didn't answer that question. But there's really only one choice, isn't there? Only one house that fits. The house of those who are set apart. The house of those who carry winter in their blood. Wait, I don't. Slytherin. The silence shattered. Harry pulled the hat off his head and stared at the hall. The Gryffindor table looked stunned. The Ravenclaws were whispering furiously. The Hufflepuffs seemed confused. The Slytherins were smiling. Not nice smiles. Calculating ones. Kind of smiles that said they'd just acquired something valuable and were already planning how to use it. Harry walked to the Slytherin table on numb legs. The only empty seat was next to Daphne, N.D. He had a feeling that wasn't a coincidence. Congratulations, she said as he sat down. Her voice was flat, but there was something in her eyes that might have been satisfaction. Welcome to the Snake Pit. I didn't choose this. Nobody chooses. The hat decides. She turned back to watch the rest of the sorting. Though I suspect it had help. Harry wanted to ask what she meant, but the feast had started and suddenly there was food everywhere and the noise in his head was drowning out everything else. He ate in silence, surrounded by strangers who kept glancing at him like he was a puzzle they couldn't quite solve. The first day of classes was a disaster. Harry woke up in the Slytherin dormitory to the sound of his roommates' wants hitting him like a wave. Draco Malfoy wanted his father's approval. Theodore Nott wanted to be left alone. Blaise Zabini wanted everyone to think he was mysterious. Vincent Crabbe and Gregory Goyle both wanted breakfast. He stumbled to the bathroom and threw up. Charming, Malfoy said from the doorway. As the famous Harry Potter feeling unwell. Go away. I don't think I will. Malfoy leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. My father told me about you. Said you were raised by muggles. Said you don't know anything about our world. Harry spat into the toilet and straightened up. His reflection in the mirror looked pale and sick. The shimmer on his skin was more visible than usual. Your father sounds like a real piece of work. Malfoy's eyes narrowed. Watch your mouth, Potter. Or what? The temperature in the bathroom dropped. Frost crept across the mirror, the sink, the tiles under Malfoy's feet. The blonde boy's breath came out in white puffs. What the? Malfoy stepped back. How are you doing that? I'm not doing anything. Harry pushed past him into the dormitory. Stay out of my way and I'll stay out of yours. He grabbed his robes and left before Malfoy could respond. Charms was first period. Professor Flitwick was a tiny man who stood on a stack of books to see over his desk. He had a squeaky voice and an enthusiasm for magic that bordered on manic. Welcome, he said as the first years filed in. Todd, I will be starting with something simple. The repairing charm. Reparo. Can anyone tell me what this spell does? The Granger girl's hand shot up so fast she nearly hit the boy next to her. The repairing charm restores broken objects to their original state by reversing the physical damage and... Yes, excellent. 5 points to Gryffindor. Flitwick beamed. Now, everyone take out your wands. We'll be practicing on these. He waved his own wand and a pile of broken pottery appeared on each desk. Shattered plates, cracked cups, splintered bowls. Harry stared at his pile. Then he stared at his wand. He'd gotten it from a shop in a place called Diagon Alley, during a brief supervised trip with Professor McGonagall. The wandmaker had been terrified of him. The wand had chosen him, apparently, but it had taken a long time. 14 tries before one finally stopped freezing solid in his hand. The incantation is Reparo, Flitwick was saying. The wand movement is a simple tap. Like this, he demonstrated, and a broken teacup on his desk reassembled itself. Now you try. Around the room, students began tapping their broken pottery and saying, Reparo, with varying degrees of success. The Granger girl got hers on the first try. Most of the others managed a few cracks sealing, a few chips rejoining. Harry raised his wand. He thought about repair, about fixing, about making broken things whole. The pottery on his desk exploded. Not into more pieces, into ice, crystalline structures that grew out of the broken edges, spreading and connecting, fusing the shattered fragments tog. Ether into something that wasn't a plate or a cup anymore. Something new, something beautiful. A sculpture of frozen glass and porcelain that glittered in the morning light. The room went quiet. Harry lowered his wand. I didn't mean to. Flitwick had climbed down from his books and was approaching Harry's desk with wide eyes. Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. He reached out to touch the ice sculpture. Then pulled his hand back when he felt the cold radiating from it. This isn't a repairing charm. I know. I'm sorry. I was trying to. No. Don't apologize. Flitwick was practically bouncing with excitement. This is something else entirely. Some form of cryokinetic transfiguration, perhaps. Or elemental conjuration. I've never seen anything like it. The other students were staring. Harry could feel their confusion, their curiosity, their fear. The Granger girl was frowning at him like he'd done something wrong. A red-haired boy at the next desk over was gaping openly. Can you do it again? Flitwick asked. With a different object. Harry didn't want to, but the tiny professor was looking at him with such eager hope that he couldn't say no. He picked up another broken piece of pottery. A cup this time, cracked down the middle. He thought about fixing it. About making it whole. Ice spread across the crack. Not covering it, filling it. The cup sealed itself with a seam of frozen crystal that was stronger than the original ceramic. Extraordinary. Flitwick breathed. Absolutely extraordinary. 20 points to Slytherin. Harry put the cup down and tried tea. Ignore the way his classmates were looking at him. At the back of the room, he caught Dumbledore watching through the doorway. The headmaster's expression was unreadable, but his wants were loud and clear. He was afraid. Of Harry. Potions was worse. Professor Snape was a tall, thin man with greasy black hair and a permanent sneer. He taught in the dungeons, in a cold room full of jars containing things Harry didn't want to identify. There will be no foolish wand waving in this class, Snape said as they took their seats. You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making. I don't expect many of you to appreciate the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron, the delicate power of liquids that creep through human veins. He droned on. Harry tried to listen, but the voices in his head were getting louder. Snape's wants were particularly intense. He wanted respect. He wanted recognition. He wanted someone specific to pay for something, though Harry couldn't tell who or what. And underneath all that, buried deep, he wanted something he'd lost a long time ago. Something that felt like grief and love and guilt all tangled together. Potter. Harry's head snapped up. Snape was standing directly in front of him, eyes blazing. I asked you a question. Sorry, I didn't hear it. Clearly. Snape's lip curled. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Harry had no idea. He'd barely started reading his textbooks. I don't know, sir. Tut. Fame clearly isn't everything. Snape's voice dripped with contempt. Let's try again. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar? I don't know. And what is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? I don't know, sir. But if you want to humiliate me, you could at least do it without the pretense of education. The room went dead silent. Snape's eyes widened. Then they narrowed. His face twisted into something ugly. 10 points from Slytherin, he said softly. For your cheek. That's not fair. I just said I didn't know. 20 points. Would you like to continue? Harry clenched his jaw. The temperature in the room was dropping. He could feel ice forming on the underside of his desk. No, sir. Then perhaps you should pay attention. Snape turned and stalked back to the front of the room. Today you will be brewing a simple cure for boils. Instructions are on the board. You have 1 hour. Begin. Harry looked at the board. The instructions were written in cramped handwriting that was hard to read. He looked at his cauldron. Then at his ingredients. Then at his classmates, who were already starting to chop and measure and stir. He had no idea what he was doing. The red-haired boy from Charm's class was at the next table. He leaned over and whispered, "Hey, you need help." "I'm fine." "You don't look fine. You look like you're about to freeze something again." Harry glanced at him. Freckles. Blue eyes. Hand-me-down robes that were slightly too short in the sleeves. He was radiating wants so loudly that Harry had to work to filter them out. Attention. Recognition. Friends. Something to make him special. "I'm Ron," the boy said. "Ron Weasley. Harry Potter." "Yeah, I know." Ron grinned. "Everyone knows. That was brilliant, by the way. What you said to Snape. Nobody ever talks back to him." "I didn't mean to. It just came out." "Still brilliant." Ron nodded toward the board. "Look, the trick with the porcupine quills is to crush them, not cut them. Snape never explains that, but it makes a difference." Harry looked at his quills. Then at Ron. The boy's want for friendship was almost painful in its intensity. "Thanks," Harry said. Ron beamed. They worked in silence for a while. As much silence as Harry could manage with the constant background noise of everyone's desires. Ron chatted while he worked, a steady stream of commentary about Snape being a git and the Slytherins being evil and how weird it was that Harry had been sorted there. "No offense," he added quickly. "I mean, you seem all right. For a Slytherin. I didn't choose it. Nobody chooses. That's what makes it weird. The hat put you there for a reason." Harry didn't have an answer for that. Halfway through the hour, disaster struck. Harry was stirring his potion, which had turned an unfortunate shade of brown instead of the specified pink. When the voices in his head suddenly spiked. Someone wanted something intensely, desperately, right now. He looked up. Neville Longbottom, a round-faced Gryffindor boy, was staring at his cauldron in horror. The liquid inside was bubbling violently, rising up like a wave about to crash. His partner had added the quills too early. The potion was about to explode. Harry didn't think. He just reacted. Cold poured out of him in a wave. The temperature in the room plummeted. The potion in Neville's cauldron froze solid, mid-explosion, a sculpture of suspended chaos. Every other potion in the room froze too. "What?" Snape stared at the room full of frozen cauldrons. His face had gone white. "What did you do?" "I stopped the explosion," Harry said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Distant. Cold. "You're welcome. You froze everything. Every single potion. Do you have any idea how much those ingredients cost? How long it will take to?" The Longbottom kid's cauldron was about to blow up in his face. "Would you rather I let that happen?" Snape's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes moved to Neville, who was sitting very still, his face inches from a frozen wave of poisonous liquid that would have melted his skin if it had hit him. "Class dismissed," Snape said finally. His voice was strained. "Potter, stay behind." The other students fled. Ron shot Harry a look that was half impressed, half terrified. Neville mouthed, "Thank you," as he passed. When the room was empty, Snape turned to Harry with an expression that was hard to read. "That was not normal magic." "I know. That was not wizard magic at all." "I know." Snape moved closer. His black eyes were boring into Harry's, searching for something. "What are you, Potter?" "I don't know." Harry met his gaze without flinching. "But you felt it, didn't you? When I froze the room. You felt something." Snape's jaw tightened. "I felt cold. Not just cold. Something else. Something that scared you." The professor didn't answer, but Harry could feel his wants shifting, changing. The grief and guilt were still there, but now there was something new. Curiosity. Wariness. And underneath it all, a question he was afraid to ask. "The headmaster will want to see you," Snape said finally. "Go." Harry went. He didn't go to Dumbledore's office. Instead, he went to the library. It was mostly empty at this hour. Students were still in classes or at lunch. The only person he could see was Daphne, sitting at a table in the back corner with a stack of books around her. She looked up as he approached. You froze Snape's entire classroom. Word travels fast. Slytherin Common Room has its own information network. She gestured to the empty chair across from her. Sit. Harry sat. The library was quiet, both physically and mentally. Daphne's silence helped, but there was something about this place itself. Old books and dusty shelves and the weight of accumulated knowledge. It dampened the noise somehow. Tell me what happened, Daphne said. Harry told her. The charms class, the ice sculpture, Flitwick's excitement. The potions class, Snape's questions, the frozen explosion. The look on Dumbledore's face in the doorway. Daphne listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You're getting stronger, she said finally. What? This morning, you said the voices were louder than usual. Now you're freezing entire rooms without meaning to. She leaned forward. Whatever is happening to you, it's accelerating. Harry's stomach dropped. That's not good. No, it's not. She pulled one of the books from her stack and pushed it across the table. I've been researching, trying to find anything that matches your condition. And nothing in modern magical literature. Cryomancy exists, but it's wand-based and limited. What you're doing is something else entirely. She tapped the book. This is a history of pre-Hogwarts magic. Before wands, before incantations, there are references to old magic that operated on different principles. Intent-based, seasonal, tied to natural cycles rather than learned spells. Harry opened the book. The pages were yellowed, and the text was in some archaic form of English he could barely read. I don't understand any of this. Neither do I. Not fully. Daphne's pale eyes were intense. But there's a pattern. The oldest. Magic was always connected to something larger. The sun, the moon, the seasons. Winter magic, specifically, was associated with gift-giving, with knowing hearts, with. She hesitated. With what? With a figure, a spirit. Different cultures had different names for him. The Winter King, Father Frost, Saint Nicholas. Harry's blood went cold, colder than usual. Santa Claus, he said. Daphne nodded slowly. It sounds absurd when you say it like that. But the mythology is consistent across dozens of cultures. A being who knows what everyone wants. Who can travel anywhere in a single night. Who commands the winter itself. That's a children's story. Most stories come from somewhere. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small object. I found this in the restricted section. Hidden behind a shelf. It was a wooden soldier. Identical to the one Harry had found in Dumbledore's office. The one that had whispered to him. Where did you get that? I told you. Restricted section. Someone put it there a long time ago. There's a preservation charm on it that's at least a century old. She set it on the table between them. When I touched it, I heard something. Harry's heart was pounding. What did you hear? Daphne's face was pale, paler than usual. The shadow wakes, she said. They stared at each other across the table. That's what mine said too, Harry whispered. I know. That's why I'm showing you this. Daphne picked up the soldier and turned it over in her hands. These aren't random artifacts. They're warnings. Something left them here, scattered through the castle, waiting to be found by the right person. The right person being me. The right person being whoever inherited the winter. Which, apparently, is you. She set the soldier down with a click. There's more. She broke the soldier open. Harry hadn't expected that. He jerked back as the wooden figure split in half, revealing a hollow interior. Inside was a bundle of dried sticks, thin and brown and tied together with black thread. What is that? Birch. Daphne's voice was flat. In the old stories, birch branches were used for punishment. For the naughty children who didn't deserve gifts. So in those same stories, the punishment wasn't delivered by the gift giver. It was delivered by his shadow. His opposite. The dark half of the winter myth. She looked up at him. The Krampus. The word hung in the air between them. Harry didn't know what a Krampus was. But something inside him did. Something ancient and cold that recognized the name and recoiled from it. I've been having dreams, he said slowly. Since I got here. Dreams about something chasing me through the snow. Something with horns and chains. Daphne's expression didn't change, but her silence deepened somehow. More intense. You should have told me that earlier. I didn't think it was important. Everything is important now. She gathered up her books and stood. We need to find more of these soldiers. And We need to figure out what the shadow wants before it finishes waking up. How do we do that? Daphne looked at him. For just a moment, her careful mask slipped, and he saw something underneath. Not fear, exactly. Determination. We start by learning what you can actually do, she said. Tonight, after curfew, meet me in the room of requirement. The what? Ask any portrait how to find it. They'll know. She headed for the door. Then paused. And Potter, yeah, don't freeze anyone else today. We can't afford the attention. She left before he could respond. Harry sat alone in the library, staring at the broken wooden soldier and the bundle of birch twigs that smelled faintly of sulfur. The shadow wakes. He didn't know what that meant. But he was starting to think he'd find out soon enough. Whether he wanted to or not. The rest of the day was a blur. Harry went to herbology, where he accidentally froze a pot of venomous tentacula and Professor Sprout looked at him like he'd kicked her puppy. He went to history of magic, where a ghost droned on about goblin rebellions while half the class slept and the other half stared at Harry like he might explode. He went to lunch, where he sat at the end of the Slytherin table and ate alone because everyone else was too nervous to get close to him. The only bright spot was dinner. Ron Weasley, apparently unbothered by house boundaries, plopped down across from him in the Great Hall with a grin. Brilliant job in potions today. Everyone's talking about it. I thought Gryffindors weren't supposed to sit at the Slytherin table. Since when do I follow rules? Ron loaded his plate with shepherd's pie. Besides, you saved Neville's face. That makes you all right in my book. Harry watched him eat. The boy's wants were loud and clear. Friendship, acceptance. Someone who would see him as more than just another Weasley. It was exhausting to feel, but also, kind of nice. Ron's desires weren't complicated or dark. They were simple, human. Why are you being nice to me? Harry asked. Ron paused mid-bite. What do you mean? Everyone else is scared of me. Or suspicious. Or waiting for me to do something useful they can take advantage of. You're just here. Yeah, well, Ron shrugged. My mum always said Harry Potter was a hero. Defeated you-know-who when he was just a baby. Saved the whole wizarding world. I don't remember any of that. Doesn't matter. You still did it. Ron grinned. Plus, you told Snape off. That's worth a few awkward dinners. Harry almost smiled. Thanks. Don't mention it. Seriously, don't. Why brothers would never let me hear the end of it if they knew I was making friends with a Slytherin. They ate together in silence for a while. Around them, the Great Hall buzzed with conversation and laughter and the mental noise of hundreds of students wanting hundreds of different things. It was almost peaceful. Then Ron asked the question Harry had been dreading. So that ice thing you do. Can you make anything with it? Harry's appetite vanished. What do you mean? Like, could you make, I dunno, a broomstick? Or gold? Or, no, but you made that sculpture in charms. And the ice thing in potions. If you can do that, surely you could. I said no. The words came out sharper than Harry intended. Ron flinched. Sorry, I just thought. Everyone thinks. Harry pushed his plate away. The food had gone cold anyway. Frost spreading across the surface. Everyone wants something from me. Everyone's got an idea of what I should do with this thing I didn't ask for and don't understand. Nobody just wants me to be normal. Ron was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was smaller. I didn't mean it like that. I know. Harry forced himself to relax. I'm sorry. It's just been a long day. Yeah, I bet. Ron pushed his own plate aside. Look, I get it. Everyone wants something from the boy who lived. Must be exhausting. You have no idea. Ron studied him for a moment. Something in his expression shifted. The wanting was still there, but it was muted now. Pushed aside by something that felt almost like understanding. If you ever want to just hang out, he said quietly. No expectations, no ice sculptures, no famous hero stuff. Just two blokes playing chess or whatever. I'm around. Harry looked at him. The offer was genuine. He could feel it. Thanks, Ron. Don't mention it. Ron stood up. I should get back before someone notices. But seriously, mate, anytime. He walked away, heading for the Gryffindor table, and Harry was left alone with his frozen dinner and his tangled thoughts. Everyone wanted something from him. Ron was no different, not really. His desires were clearer now that Harry was paying attention. He wanted to be special. He wanted to be seen. He wanted Harry to be the friend who would make him important by association. But at least he was honest about it. At least he was willing to be nice even when he wasn't getting what he wanted. That was more than Harry could say for most people. He left the Great Hall and headed for the dungeons. The common room was busy when he arrived. Students clustered in groups, talking and laughing and shooting him looks when they thought he wasn't watching. Draco Malfoy was holding court by the fire, telling some story that had his cronies chuckling. Harry ignored them all. He went to his dormitory, grabbed his bag, and headed back out. He had somewhere to be. The room of requirement was on the 7th floor. Harry found it by following the directions of a portrait of a knight who seemed entirely too excited to help. Walk past the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy 3 times while thinking about what you need. He did it. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. A door appeared in the wall. Harry pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was nothing like he expected. It was small and cozy, with a fire crackling in a stone hearth and comfortable chairs arranged around a low table. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and the ceiling was painted with stars that actually seemed to move. Daphne was already there, sitting in one of the chairs with a book open on her lap. You found it. The knight was very helpful. Sir Cadogan. Daphne closed her book. He's enthusiastic but not very bright. Most people find him annoying. Harry sat down across from her. The chair was surprisingly comfortable. The fire was warm, but it didn't bother him the way normal heat did. It felt right, somehow. What is this place? He asked. The room of requirement. It becomes whatever you need it to be. Daphne gestured at the walls. I asked for somewhere private. Somewhere we could work without being disturbed. Work on what? On you. She pulled something from her bag. The broken wooden soldier from the library. You need to understand what you are, Potter. And we need to know what's hunting you. Harry looked at the soldier. At the birch twigs inside. At Daphne's pale face in the firelight. How? The same way any mystery is solved. She set the soldier on the table between them. We follow the clues. We test theories. We learn. She pulled out more items from her bag. A notebook, a quill, a small silver knife. First, we need to understand the scope of your abilities. The ice is obvious. The empathy is less so. She opened the notebook to a blank page. Tell me exactly what you feel when you sense someone's desires. Harry tried to explain. The pressure in his head. The way wants felt like sounds, or colors, or weights. The difference between loud desires and quiet ones. The way some people were easier to read than others. Daphne wrote it all down, her quill scratching steadily. Interesting, she said when he finished. It sounds less like mind reading and more like emotional resonance. You're not hearing thoughts, you're feeling intentions. Is there a difference? A significant one. Thoughts can be hidden. Intentions are harder to mask. She tapped her quill against the paper. That's why I'm quiet to you, most likely. Occlumency doesn't hide thoughts, it organizes them. Suppresses emotional responses. Makes intentions muted. Can you teach me? Maybe. Eventually. She set down the quill. But occlumency wouldn't stop your powers. Just make them more controllable. You'd still feel everything, you'd just be better at filtering. Harry slumped back in his chair. Great. Don't be dramatic. It's useful information. Daphne stood up and moved to the center of the room. Now, the ice. Show me. Show you what? Anything. Whatever comes naturally. Harry hesitated. Then he raised his hand. Cold gathered in his palm. Not painful, not uncomfortable. Just cold. He thought about shape, about form, about creating instead of destroying. A snowflake crystallized in the air above his hand. Then another. Then a dozen, swirling in a miniature storm that grew and grew until it filled the space between them. Fascinating, Daphne breathed. She reached out and caught one of the snowflakes on her finger. It didn't melt at her touch. They're perfect, every one of them unique. Is that unusual? Natural snowflakes are never this perfect. These are idealized, like someone drew them from imagination rather than physics. She let the snowflake fall and stepped back. Can you make something more complex? A shape, an object. Harry thought about the ice sculptures from Charm's class. About the frozen explosion in potions. He could do those things, but they'd been accidents. Instincts. He tried to focus, to create something intentional. A toy soldier. The cold in his hand shifted, grew, spread outward in crystalline patterns that connected and solidified. Within seconds, there was an ice sculpture standing on his palm. A perfect replica of the wooden soldier from the library. Daphne stared at it. You made that from memory? Yeah, every detail. The paint, the stance, the proportions. I just thought about it and... Harry trailed off. The soldier in his hand was perfect, but it felt wrong somehow. Empty, like a copy without a soul. The real soldier had whispered to him. This one was silent. There's something missing, he said. It looks right, but it doesn't feel right. Daphne nodded slowly. The original soldiers weren't just objects. They were vessels for something. Messages left behind by whoever came before you. The previous Santa Claus, maybe, or someone who served him. She picked up the ice soldier and examined it. Your power can create forms, but not contents. You can shape ice into anything, but you can't give it meaning. Not yet. How do I learn? I don't know. Daphne set the soldier down. But I suspect the answer is somewhere in those wooden soldiers. They're the key to understanding what you've inherited. Quote, they spent another hour experimenting. Harry tried creating different objects. Some came easily. Snowflakes, ice crystals, simple shapes. Others were harder. Complex mechanisms, moving parts. Anything that required precision rather than instinct. By the end, he was exhausted. That's enough for tonight, Daphne said. She was writing furiously in her notebook, recording observations and theories. You need to rest. Tomorrow we'll try something different. What? The empathy. I want to see if you can learn to control it. Turn it off and on instead of being overwhelmed. Harry stood up. His legs were shaky. You sound like a scientist. I am a scientist. Magic is just another branch of natural philosophy. She closed her notebook. Now go, before someone notices you're missing. Harry walked to the door. Then paused. Daphne. Yes. Why are you helping me? She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful. Measured. Because whatever is coming, it affects everyone. Not just you. If the shadow wakes and you're not ready, people will die. She met his eyes. I don't like people dying. That's it. That's it. She turned back to her notes. Good night, Potter. Harry left the room of requirement and made his way back to the dungeons. The castle was quiet at this hour. Most students were in their common rooms or their beds. The portraits whispered as he passed, but he ignored them. The voices in his head were quieter now too. Tired, maybe, or just muted by distance. He was almost to the Slytherin entrance when he felt it. Something wrong. Something cold in a way that had nothing to do with him. He stopped, turned. There, in the shadows of the corridor, something moved. A shape that was there and not there. Dark, hunched, wrong. Harry's breath came out in a white cloud. But he was always cold. This was different. This was fear. The shape shifted, grew. 2 points of red light appeared where eyes should be. Then it was gone. Harry stood alone in the corridor, heart pounding, hands shaking. He didn't know what he'd seen. But he knew what it felt like. It felt like being watched. It felt like being hunted. It felt like the beginning of something terrible. The shadow wakes. The words echoed in his mind as he hurried back to his dormitory and lay awake in his bed until dawn. In his pocket, a bundle of birch twigs he didn't remember picking up smelled faintly of sulfur. Sleep stopped being an option 3 days after the corridor incident. Harry lay in his bed in the Slytherin dormitory, staring at the green-tinged ceiling. Listening to Draco Malfoy snore in the bed across the room. The lake pressed against the windows, dark and heavy. Somewhere in the castle, a clock chimed 2 in the morning. The voices wouldn't stop. They'd gotten louder since he saw the shadow. More insistent, more desperate. Every student in Hogwarts wanted something, and every want was a pressure against the inside of his skull. Building and building until he thought his head might crack open. A first year in Ravenclaw wanted her mother to write back. A 6th year in Hufflepuff wanted the courage to ask someone to the upcoming Hogsmeade weekend. A Gryffindor prefect wanted to stop having nightmares about his brother's accident. Deeper, darker. A 7th year wanted to hurt the boy who'd spread rumors about her. A professor wanted a drink so badly his hands shook when he tried to grade papers. A house elf wanted to die because its master had given it clothes and it had nowhere to go. Harry pressed his hands over his ears. It didn't help. The sounds weren't coming from outside. He sat up, swung his legs over the side of the bed. His feet hit cold stone, and frost spread from the contact, crystalline patterns racing across the floor. Malfoy muttered something in his sleep and pulled his blankets tighter. Harry grabbed his robes and left. The common room was empty at this hour. The fire had burned down to embers, casting dim shadows across the leather furniture. Harry moved through it like a ghost, his bare feet leaving frost prints on the carpet. He needed air. He needed space. He needed somewhere the voices couldn't reach. The castle was different at night. During the day, it was crowded and loud, every corridor packed with students rushing to classes or clustered in groups, gossiping. At night, it was empty. Hollow. The portraits slept in their frames, the suits of armor stood silent, and the only sound was the distant drip of water somewhere deep in the dungeons. Harry walked without direction, upstairs, down corridors, through doors he'd never noticed before. The voices followed him, but they were quieter now, muted by distance and sleep. He found himself in the astronomy tower. The windows were open. Cold November wind whipped through the room, carrying the smell of rain and dead leaves. Harry walked to the edge and looked out at the grounds far below. The lake was a black mirror reflecting the clouded sky. The forbidden forest was a dark mass on the horizon. Beyond that, mountains, invisible in the darkness. He was so tired. Not physically. He could go days without sleep if he had to. The cold in his blood kept him awake, alert, functioning. But mentally, emotionally, he was exhausted. The constant pressure of everyone's wants, the weight of expectations he didn't understand. The fear of the shadow he'd seen in the corridor. It was too much. He leaned against the window frame and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the sun was rising. Harry blinked. The sky was pale pink and gold. The clouds streaked with color. The lake had gone from black to silver. Birds were singing somewhere in the distance. He'd been standing here all night. His robes were stiff with frost. His skin had the shimmer again, more visible in the morning light. His breath came out in white clouds even though the wind had died down. Something was wrong. He could feel it, not in his head, not in the voices. Something physical, something close. Harry turned and ran. The great hall was chaos when he arrived. Students were clustered around the Hufflepuff table, shouting and pointing. Professors were pushing through the crowd, their wands drawn. Someone was screaming. Harry shoved his way to the front. A boy was floating 3 feet above the table. Not flying, not levitating, floating, like a balloon on a string. Bobbing gently in the air, his robes hanging loose around him and his arms dangling at his sides. His eyes were open. His mouth was moving, but no sound came out. "Get him down," someone shouted. "I'm trying." Professor Flitwick was waving his wand in complicated patterns, sweat beading on his tiny forehead. The magic isn't responding. It's not a spell, it's something else. Harry felt sick. He knew what this was. The boy was a third year named Justin Finch Fletchley. Harry had passed him in the corridor 2 days ago. He'd felt Justin's want, clear and desperate, to be light. To float above his problems. To escape the weight of expectations his parents had placed on him. Someone had granted that wish. Literally. "I didn't do this," Harry whispered. But he wasn't sure. He wasn't sure of anything anymore. "Potter." He turned. Dumbledore was striding toward him, his robes billowing behind him and his face set in hard lines. The headmaster's wants hit Harry like a wave: fear, suspicion. The desperate need to control a situation that was spiraling out of control. "Come with me, now." Harry followed because he didn't know what else to do. They didn't go to Dumbledore's office. They went to the hospital wing, where Madame Pomfrey had managed to anchor Justin to a bed with heavy leather straps. The boy was still floating, pulling against the restraints like a kite in a strong wind. "This is not natural magic," Dumbledore said. His voice was quiet, controlled, but Harry could feel the tension underneath. "This is not wizard magic at all. I didn't do it. I didn't say you did." The headmaster turned to look at him. Those blue eyes were sharp, piercing, seeing too much. "But you know what did." Harry swallowed. "The shadow." "Explain." "I don't know how to explain." Harry's hands were shaking. He shoved them in his pockets to hide it. There's something in the castle. Something that's been watching me since I arrived. Daphne and I found these wooden soldiers. And they had warnings inside them, and Miss Greengrass is involved in this. She's been helping me, researching. Harry met the headmaster's eyes. She thinks whatever I am, whatever power I inherited, it has a dark side. A shadow. Something that punishes instead of giving. Dumbledore was silent for a long moment. His wants shifted, rearranged themselves, became something harder to read. The Krampus, he said finally. Harry's blood went cold. You know about it. I know the legends. Every culture that celebrates the winter gift giver also tells stories of his opposite. The one who punishes the wicked. The one who grants wishes in twisted ways. Dumbledore's jaw tightened. I had hoped those stories were merely stories. They're not, evidently. The headmaster looked at Justin, still straining against his bonds. This boy wanted to float, to be free of his burdens. The shadow granted that wish, but the interpretation was literal. Cruel. Can you fix him? I don't know. Dumbledore's voice was heavy. This magic is old, older than Hogwarts, older than wands. I'm not certain modern spellwork can touch it. Harry stared at the floating boy, at the terror in his eyes, at the silent scream on his lips. This is my fault, he said. We don't know that. Yes we do. Harry's voice cracked. The shadow is connected to me. It's the dark side of whatever power I have. If I wasn't here, this wouldn't be happening. Dumbledore didn't deny it. That was almost worse than if he had. You should return to your dormitory, the headmaster said finally. There will be questions, rumors. It would be best if you weren't seen near the hospital wing. You want me to hide. I want you to be safe. Dumbledore's eyes softened, just for a moment. Whatever is happening, Mr. Potter, I don't believe you're the cause. But I also can't guarantee that others will see it that way. Harry left. He didn't go to his dormitory. He went to the library, to the back corner where Daphne always sat. And found her surrounded by books with dark circles under her eyes. She looked up when he approached. Her expression didn't change, but her silence deepened. She'd heard about Justin. It was the shadow. Harry said, I know. How do you know? Because 3 other students woke up with their wishes granted this morning. Daphne pushed a sheet of parchment across the table. A Ravenclaw who wanted to be invisible is now completely transparent. A Gryffindor who wanted to be strong broke her own arm trying to pick up her book bag. And a Slytherin who wanted people to listen to him can't stop talking. Literally, he's been speaking for 4 hours straight without pause. Harry sat down heavily. This is getting worse. It's escalating. Daphne's voice was clinical, detached. But Harry could see the fear in her eyes. The shadow isn't just watching anymore. It's acting, granting wishes in the most harmful way possible. Can we stop it? I don't know. She pulled another book from her pile. Everything I've found suggests that the shadow and the gift giver are 2 halves of the same whole. You can't have one without the other. So as long as I exist, the shadow exists. Maybe. Daphne hesitated. There's another theory. In some of the oldest legends, the shadow only manifests when the gift giver rejects his responsibilities. When he refuses to judge, to decide who deserves gifts and who deserves punishment. Harry went cold, colder than usual. You're saying this is happening because I won't use the naughty and nice list. I'm saying, the power you inherited was designed to do both. Give and punish. If you only do one, the other finds a way to express itself. That's insane. You want me to start punishing people. I want you to understand what you're dealing with. Daphne's voice sharpened. This isn't a fairy tale, Potter. You didn't inherit some cute magic that lets you make snowflakes and spread joy. You inherited a cosmic force that demands balance. If you won't provide it, the shadow will. Harry stared at her. Her silence was still there, that blessed emptiness where he could think, but it felt different now. Harder. I can't judge people, he said. I can't decide who's naughty and who's nice. That's not right. Then find another way to balance the power. But do it quickly. Daphne gathered her books. Before someone else gets hurt. She left him alone in the library with a pile of ancient texts and a growing sense of dread. The rumors started before lunch. Harry heard them in the corridors, in the common room, in the great hall. Students whispering behind their hands, shooting him looks when they thought he wasn't watching. Did you hear? Potter was in the hospital wing right after they found Finch Fletchley. They say he can freeze people. Just look at them and bam, ice. My cousin said his whole family went dark. Parseltongue and everything. He's in Slytherin, isn't he? Makes sense. Harry tried to ignore it. Kept his head down, went to classes, sat alone at meals. The voices in his head were worse than ever, a constant roar of fear and suspicion and morbid curiosity. They're all scared of you now, he thought. Good, maybe they'll leave you alone. But they didn't leave him alone. Ron found him in the courtyard after Transfiguration, shoulders hunched against the November cold and his face pale. Harry, we need to talk. Not now, Ron. Yes, now. Ron grabbed his arm. The contact sent a spike of cold through both of them, and Ron jerked back, cradling his fingers. Bloody hell, that hurt. Sorry. Harry wasn't sorry. He was tired and scared and the voices wouldn't stop and he couldn't deal with Ron's simple, desperate wanting right now. What do you want? I want to know if you did it. Harry went still. Did what? The floating kid. The invisible one. All of it. Ron's jaw was tight. People are saying you're behind it. That your freaky ice powers are making wishes come true in bad ways. I didn't do it. Then who did? It's complicated. Uncomplicate it. Ron stepped closer. His breath came out in white clouds from the cold Harry was radiating. I stood up for you. When people started talking, I said you were all right. I said you saved Neville in potions. But now there are 4 kids in the hospital wing and everyone says it's connected to you and I need to know the truth. Harry wanted to tell him. Wanted to explain about the shadow and the gift giver and the cosmic balance that was tearing itself apart inside him. But how could he? Ron was simple. Ron wanted friendship and recognition and someone to make him feel special. He wouldn't understand. I didn't hurt those people, Harry said. But I can't explain what did. Ron stared at him. The wanting in his eyes was shifting, changing. Hope turning to suspicion. Trust turning to doubt. You know something. I know a lot of things. Don't be smart with me. Ron's voice was getting louder. Other students were starting to look. I've been defending you and you won't even tell me what's going on. Some friend you are. We're not friends, Ron. The words came out cold and flat. Harry hadn't meant to say them. But once they were out, he couldn't take them back. We've had a few conversations. That doesn't make us friends. Ron flinched like he'd been slapped. Fine, he said. His voice was quiet now. Hurt. Fine. I get it. The famous Harry Potter doesn't need friends from poor families. Doesn't need anyone who can't help him with his dark wizard schemes. That's not what I meant. Save it. Ron turned and walked away. I hope whatever's inside you is worth it, Potter. Because you're going to end up alone. Harry watched him go. The wanting that had been radiating off Ron was different now. Not friendship. Not recognition. Betrayal. Harry had felt it before, in the Dursleys, in strangers on the street. That particular flavor of hurt that came from expectations being destroyed. But he'd never caused it before. He stood in the courtyard until the cold drove everyone else inside, and then he stood there longer, alone with the voices and the guilt and the growing certainty that everything was falling apart. The confrontation with Dumbledore came that evening. Harry was summoned to the headmaster's office by a first year who wouldn't meet his eyes. He climbed He spiraled staircase and found Dumbledore sitting behind his desk, flanked by Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape. They all looked grim. Mr. Potter, Dumbledore said, please sit down. Harry sat. The chair was comfortable, but he couldn't relax. The 3 adults were radiating wants so loudly he could barely think. Dumbledore wanted answers. McGonagall wanted order restored. Snape wanted something Harry couldn't quite identify. Something that felt like old grief mixed with fresh fear. There have been developments, Dumbledore continued. Since this morning, 2 more students have been affected by the phenomenon. Harry's stomach dropped. Who? A Slytherin 5th year who wished to never feel fear again. She is now in a catatonic state, unable to process any emotional response whatsoever. Dumbledore's voice was heavy, and a Gryffindor 2nd year who wished to be noticed. He is currently glowing so brightly that we've had to keep him in a dark room to prevent blindness in those around him. 6 students. 6 wishes. 6 lives twisted into nightmares. I didn't do this, Harry said. We know. McGonagall's voice was sharp. At least, we know you didn't do it intentionally. But the magic affecting these students carries your signature, Mr. Potter. The same cold, the same ancient resonance. Whatever is causing this, it's connected to you. It's the shadow. So Miss Greengrass informed us. Snape spoke for the first time, his voice dripping with contempt. A convenient explanation. A dark force acting independently, granting wishes in twisted ways. Very dramatic. It's the truth. The truth, Snape sneered, is that you are an unstable magical anomaly with powers you don't understand and can't control. The truth is that students are being hurt because of your presence in this school. Severus. Dumbledore's voice was calm but firm. That's enough. Is it? Snape leaned forward. How many more children need to be hospitalized before we admit what's obvious? Potter is dangerous. His magic is corrupted. He should be contained before someone dies. Harry's hands clenched. The temperature in the room dropped sharply. Frost crept across the surface of Dumbledore's desk. I'm not the one hurting people, he said. His voice came out strange. Cold. The shadow is. And how do we know they're different? Snape's eyes were boring into him. How do we know this shadow isn't just another aspect of your magic? The dark side you don't want to acknowledge. Because I can feel the difference. Harry was on his feet now, though he didn't remember standing. When I use my power, it feels like giving, like joy. When the shadow acts, it feels wrong. Twisted, like someone took something beautiful and broke it. Feelings are not evidence. They're all I have. The windows cracked. All of them, simultaneously, a spiderweb of fractures spreading across the glass as the cold poured out of Harry in waves. The three professors stepped back. Even Snape looked alarmed. Mr. Potter. Dumbledore's voice was carefully controlled. You need to calm down. I can't calm down. Harry's voice broke. I can't sleep. I can't think. Every person in this castle is screaming their wants into my head and I can't make it stop. And now there's something out there hurting people using my power and everyone thinks it's me and I don't know what to do. Tears were freezing on his cheeks. Actual ice, crystallizing as they fell. I didn't ask for this, he whispered. I didn't ask for any of this. The room was silent. Dumbledore's expression had softened. Even Snape looked less hostile. I know, the headmaster said gently. I know you didn't ask for this burden, Harry. But it's yours nonetheless. And we need to find a way to manage it before more people get hurt. How? Dumbledore exchanged a look with McGonagall. Something passed between them. A decision being made. We've consulted with several experts, Dumbledore said. Specialists in ancient magic, in pre-wand traditions. They all agree on one thing. The power you carry needs a focus. Something to channel it, to control the flow. Like a wand. More than a wand. A container, of sorts. Dumbledore reached into his desk and pulled out a small object. A silver ring, simple and unadorned. This is an artifact from the Department of Mysteries. It's designed to suppress magical resonance. To create a barrier between the magic and the world. Harry stared at the ring. It felt wrong. The same way the shadow felt wrong. Like a cage waiting to close. You want to bind my powers. I want to protect you. And protect the students. Dumbledore held out the ring. This wouldn't eliminate your abilities, Harry. Just moderate them. Make them manageable. What about the shadow? Without your power to feed on, the shadow should weaken, perhaps disappear entirely. Harry reached for the ring. His fingers stopped an inch away. Every instinct he had was screaming at him to refuse. The cold in his blood, the ancient something that lived in his bones, all of it was recoiling from the silver circle like it was poison. No. Dumbledore's face tightened. Harry, I said no. Harry stepped back. I can feel what that thing is. It's not a container. It's a prison. If I put it on, I won't just lose my powers. I'll lose myself. You can't know that. I can. Harry met the headmaster's eyes. You want to help me, Professor. Then help me find another way. Help me understand what I am instead of trying to lock it away. Dumbledore stared at him for a long moment. Then he sighed and put the ring back in his desk. Very well. But understand, Harry, if the situation continues to deteriorate, I may not have a choice. The safety of the students must come first. I understand. Harry left the office without looking back. He didn't make it to the dormitory. Halfway down the 7th floor corridor, the voices in his head spiked so sharply that he staggered into the wall. Someone nearby wanted something badly. Desperately. With the kind of intensity that cut through all his defenses. Ron. Harry followed the feeling. Down a staircase, around a corner, into an empty classroom on the 5th floor. Ron was there, standing over a pile of objects that Harry recognized immediately. His things. The notebook where he'd started writing down the voices he heard. The broken wooden soldier from the library. A handful of ice crystals that he'd accidentally created and left on his bedside table. Ron had gone through his trunk. "What are you doing?" Ron spun around. His face was flushed, his hands shaking. The want radiating off him was ugly now. Vindictive. "I knew it," Ron said. His voice was trembling. "I knew you were hiding something. Those are my things. This is evidence." Ron held up the notebook. "You've been writing down what people want. You've been watching them, judging them. It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Ron's voice cracked. "Explain it to me, Harry. Explain why you've got a list of everyone's secrets. Explain why you've got these creepy little soldiers with dark magic in them. Explain why every time something goes wrong in this castle, you're always nearby." Harry didn't have an answer. Or rather, he had one, but he knew Ron wouldn't understand it. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said instead. "I know exactly what I'm talking about." Ron's eyes were bright with tears. "You think you're better than everyone. You think because you're the famous Harry Potter, because you've got these special powers, you can just do whatever you want. Judge people. Decide who deserves help and who doesn't. That's not true, isn't it?" Ron threw the notebook at him. Harry caught it reflexively. "You told me we weren't friends. After everything. After I stood up for you when no one else would. You just threw me away. Like I wasn't worth anything." Harry felt the guilt twist in his chest. "Ron, I didn't mean. Save it." Ron was crying now, tears streaming down his freckled face. "I'm done. I'm done trying to be your friend. I'm going to Dumbledore. I'm going to show him what you've been doing. And then everyone will know what you really are." He pushed past Harry and ran. Harry stood alone in the empty classroom, holding his notebook, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. Ron was going to tell Dumbledore. Tell everyone. About the notebook. About the soldiers. About all of it. And Harry would be expelled, or locked up, or worse. He couldn't let that happen. Not because he was afraid of punishment. Because if he was gone, there would be no one to stop the shadow. No one to find a way to fix what had been broken. He had to run. The Forbidden Forest was cold and dark and exactly what Harry needed. He didn't remember how he got there. One moment he was in the castle, the next he was crashing through underbrush, branches whipping at his face and roots catching at his feet. The voices in his head had gone quiet, finally, replaced by the simple silence of ancient trees and deep shadows. He ran until he couldn't run anymore. Then he collapsed against a massive oak and tried to breathe. The forest was alive around him. He could feel it, not like the castle, with its screaming wants and desperate needs. This was different, older. The trees wanted sunlight and water and to grow tall. The animals wanted food and safety and warmth. Simple things. Pure things. For the first time in weeks, Harry felt something like peace. Then he felt them, coming through the forest, moving fast, not running, exactly, but flowing. Like water finding its level. He scrambled to his feet. They emerged from the shadows like they were made of them. 7 figures, tall and lean, their skin the color of bark and their eyes the pale blue of winter ice. They wore armor made of frozen leaves and carried weapons that looked like they'd been grown rather than forged. Harry's blood went cold, colder than usual. "You," he said. The lead figure stepped forward. It was taller than the others, its face angular and ancient, its expression impossible to read. "Heir of the solstice," it said. Its voice was like wind through dead branches. "We have been waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For you to wake." The figure gestured, and the others spread out, forming a circle around Harry. "Not threatening. Protective. For you to remember." "Remember what?" "What you are." The figure moved closer. Harry could see now that it wasn't human. Had never been human. This was something older. Something that existed before wizards, before wands. Before magic had been tamed and categorized and given names. An elf. But not the kind that served wizards. The original kind. The ancient kind. "You are the gift giver," the elf said. "The Winter King. The one who knows hearts and grants wishes. It has been centuries since one of your kind walked the earth. I don't understand. You will. The elf reached into its armor and pulled out an object. A bag, made of some material Harry didn't recognize. Red and gold, shimmering faintly in the darkness. This was left for you. By the one who came before. Harry took the bag. It was heavier than it looked. Much heavier. What is it? The sack. The elf's pale eyes glittered. The tool of your office. With it, you can reach into the hearts of mortals and give them what they truly need. Not what they want, what they need. There's a difference. Always. The elf stepped back. The shadow grows stronger because you refuse your responsibility. You hear the wants but do not answer them. You know the hearts but do not judge them. This creates imbalance. And imbalance creates darkness. Harry thought of Justin, floating helplessly. Of the invisible girl. Of all the students, whose wishes had been twisted into curses. If I use this, he said slowly, if I start judging people, the shadow will stop. The shadow will become part of you again. As it was meant to be. But I don't want to judge people. I don't want to decide who deserves what. The elf made a sound that might have been a laugh. What you want is irrelevant, young king. The power chose you. The responsibility is yours. You can accept it and restore balance, or you can reject it and watch the shadow destroy everything you care about. Harry stared at the bag in his hands. The sack, the tool of Santa Claus, passed down through centuries to him. He didn't want this, but did he have a choice? Harry, he spun around. Daphne was running toward him through the trees. Her blonde hair was wild, her robes torn from branches. Her face flushed with exertion. Harry, thank Merlin, I've been looking everywhere. How did you find me? Followed the cold. She stopped a few feet away, catching her breath. Then she noticed the elves. Her eyes went wide. What? Ancient elves, Harry said. Apparently they've been waiting for me. Daphne stared at the circle of tall, bark-skinned figures. Then she looked at Harry. Then at the bag in his hands. Is that what I think it is? They called it the sack. Said it's the tool of the gift giver. The dimensional storage device from the legends. Daphne moved closer, her eyes fixed on the bag. It's supposed to be able to hold anything. Reach anywhere. Pull out exactly what's needed. That's what they said. Daphne looked at him. Her expression was hard to read in the darkness. You're going to use it, aren't you? Accept the responsibility. I don't know. Harry's voice was raw. Ron went to Dumbledore. He found my notebook, the soldiers. He thinks I've been spying on everyone. Judging them. He's going to tell the whole school. That idiot. Daphne's voice was sharp. He doesn't understand anything. Neither do I. Harry's hands tightened on the bag. Everyone wants me to be something. The school wants me to be normal. Dumbledore wants me to be controlled. The elves want me to be their winter king. Ron wanted me to be his friend. And I don't know how to be any of those things. Daphne was quiet for a moment. The forest was quiet too, the elves watching without speaking, waiting. You don't have to be what anyone else wants, she said finally. You just have to be what you are. I don't know what that is. Then figure it out. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her body against the cold radiating from his. You're the only person in this castle I can't feel wanting anything from me. Do you know how rare that is? How exhausting it is to be surrounded by people who always want something. Harry blinked. You can feel it too. Not like you. Not specific wants. Just pressure. Expectation. Everyone always wanting me to be the perfect pureblood daughter, the Ice Queen, the emotionless mask. Her voice cracked, just slightly. You're the only one who doesn't expect anything. Who just lets me be silent. Harry stared at her. In all their conversations, all their research sessions, all late night meetings in the room of requirement, she'd never talked about herself. Never shown anything behind the careful mask. Daphne, I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, she said. I'm telling you because you need to understand. You're not alone in this. Whatever you decide to do, I'll help you. Why? Because you're the only quiet place I've ever found. Her pale eyes met his. And I'm not letting that go without a fight. Something shifted in Harry's chest. Not the cold, something warmer. He looked at the elves. At the bag in his hands. At Daphne, standing beside. Him in a dark forest surrounded by ancient creatures. Okay, he said. Okay, I'll figure it out. But not their way. Not Dumbledore's way. My way. The lead elf inclined its head. As you wish, young king. But know that the shadow will not wait forever. And when it moves again, it will be stronger. Then I'll be stronger too. The elf smiled. It was not a comforting expression. We will be watching, heir of the solstice. May the winter guide your path. They faded back into the shadows. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. Harry and Daphne stood alone in the dark forest, breath visible in the cold air. The weight of ancient power heavy in Harry's hands. We should get back, Daphne said. Before someone notices we're gone. What about Ron? Dumbledore. We'll deal with that when we have to. Daphne turned toward the castle, visible through the trees as a distant cluster of lights. Right now, we need to understand that bag. Figure out how it works. If you're going to restore balance, you need to know what tools you have. Harry nodded. He slung the bag over his shoulder. It felt warm against his back, despite the cold. They walked in silence through the forest. The trees seemed to part for them, creating a path where none had existed before. Harry could feel the ancient magic of the forest responding to him, recognizing him. He wasn't just Harry Potter anymore. He was something new, something old, something that the world had been waiting for without knowing it. And whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. Daphne walked beside him, her silence a comfort in the chaos. The castle grew closer. The voices in his head started up again, fainter than before but still present. Everyone wanted something, but for the first time, Harry thought he might be able to give it to them. Not what they wanted, what they needed. The sack pulsed against his back, warm and patient, waiting to be used. In the shadows behind them, something watched. Something with red eyes and a smile made of darkness. The shadow had seen its host find the tool, and it was pleased. The game was about to change. The room of requirement had transformed itself again. Gone were the cozy chairs and crackling fire. In their place was something that looked like a cross between a war room and a mad scientist's laboratory. Maps covered every wall, marked with red pins showing where each corrupted wish had occurred. A long table dominated the center of the space, covered in evidence. Birch twigs, lumps of coal, photographs of the affected students, and page after page of Daphne's cramped notes. Harry stood at the head of the table, the sack hanging heavy on his shoulder. He hadn't let it out of his sight since the forest. Every time he touched it, he felt something pulse through him. Recognition, anticipation, like the bag was alive and waiting. 7 incidents now, Daphne said. She was pinning another photograph to the wall. A Hufflepuff 4th year who'd wished to be beautiful. She'd woken up with skin like porcelain. Literally. Hard, cold, and cracking at the joints. All in the last 5 days. The pattern is accelerating. There's a pattern. There's always a pattern. She stepped back and studied the map. Look, the first 3 incidents were scattered. Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Gryffindor. Different floors, different times. But starting with the 4th, they've been clustering. Harry moved to stand beside her. The red pins did seem to be grouping together, all of them on the upper floors of the castle. Near Gryffindor Tower, he said. Exactly. That doesn't make sense. The shadow is connected to me, right? I'm in the dungeons. Slytherin territory. The shadow isn't you. Daphne pulled a book from the pile on the table and flipped it open to a marked page. According to this, the Krampus was never meant to be part of the gift giver. It was supposed to be a separate entity. A partner. But somewhere along the line, the 2 roles merged into one person. Santa Claus. Yes. The modern mythology shows him as purely benevolent, but the older stories. She pointed to an illustration in the book. Harry's stomach turned. The creature in the picture was humanoid, but wrong. Too tall, too thin, with legs that bent backward like a goat's. Its face was a nightmare of sharp teeth and curved horns, and its hands ended in claws that looked designed for tearing flesh. Chains wrapped around its body, and it carried a bundle of birch branches in one hand and a sack in the other. That's what's inside me, Harry asked. That's what used to be inside the gift giver, yes. The capacity for punishment, for judgment, for deciding who deserves coal instead of presents. Daphne closed the book. When you inherited the power, you got both halves. But you've been suppressing one of them. I didn't know I was supposed to punish people. Exactly. So the shadow had to find another way to express itself. She gestured at the map. Through the wishes, taking what people want and twisting it into something horrible. Harry stared at the cluster of pins near Gryffindor Tower. Something was nagging at him. Something about the location. Ron, he said suddenly. Daphne looked at him. What about him? He went through my things. Found the notebook, the wooden soldiers. He was going to take them to Dumbledore. Harry's mind was racing. But what if he found something else? Something I didn't know was there. Like what? I don't know. The elves gave me the sack, but they said things had been left for me. Waiting. What if there was something else? Something that Ron took. Daphne's expression shifted. A rejected gift. What? In the legends, the gift giver doesn't just grant wishes. He also receives them. People leave offerings, requests. Most of them get answered. But some don't. The ones that are denied, the selfish wishes, the cruel ones, they get stored somewhere. In the sack, maybe. Or maybe in something else. Daphne started gathering materials from the table. We need to search Gryffindor Tower. How? I'm a Slytherin. I can't just walk in there. No, but I know someone who can. Hermione Granger was not happy to see them. Absolutely not, she said. Her arms were crossed, her bushy hair practically bristling with indignation. I'm not helping you break into my common room. We're not breaking in, Daphne said. Her voice was calm, reasonable. We're investigating. There's a difference. There really isn't. They were standing in an empty classroom on the 3rd floor. Daphne had arranged the meeting through a complicated series of notes passed via house elves. Hermione had shown up looking suspicious and had only gotten more suspicious as Daphne explained what they needed. Look, Harry said, I know you don't trust me. After everything that's happened, I wouldn't trust me either. But people are getting hurt. Whatever is doing this, it's getting stronger. And we think the source is somewhere in Gryffindor Tower. Hermione's eyes narrowed. Why Gryffindor? The incidents are clustering there. And, Harry hesitated. Ron took something from me. A few days ago. I think it might be connected. Ron wouldn't. He was angry. He felt betrayed. He went through my trunk and took everything he thought was evidence that I was up to something dark. Harry met her eyes. I'm not saying he did anything wrong on purpose. But if he accidentally took something dangerous. Hermione was quiet for a long moment. Harry could feel her wants pressing against him. Knowledge, understanding, the desperate need to figure things out. To make sense of chaos. What exactly do you think he took? She asked finally. I don't know. Something the elves left for me. A rejected wish, maybe, or some kind of artifact. Something the shadow could use as an anchor. The shadow. Harry looked at Daphne. She nodded slightly. It's complicated, Harry said. But basically, I inherited the magic of Santa Claus. Both parts of it, the giving and the punishing. I've been suppressing the punishment half, so it's been acting on its own. Twisting wishes into curses. Hermione stared at him. Her expression went through several phases: disbelief, consideration, and finally reluctant acceptance. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, she said. But it actually explains a lot. Will you help us? She was quiet again, thinking. Harry could feel her weighing options, calculating risks. If I do this, she said slowly, you have to promise me something. What? You have to tell Dumbledore. Whatever we find, whatever's really going on. You can't keep hiding it from the teachers. People could die. Harry wanted to argue. Dumbledore wanted to suppress his powers, lock them away. But Hermione was right. This was bigger than him now. Fine, he said. After we find the source, I'll tell Dumbledore everything. Hermione nodded. Then I'll help. But I'm coming with you. Gryffindor Tower smelled like old socks and fireplace smoke. Harry stood just inside the portrait hole, his heart pounding. The sack was hidden under his robes, pressing warm against his hip. Daphne was beside him, her expression carefully blank. Hermione had gone ahead to make sure the common room was empty. Clear, she called from inside. They slipped through. The Gryffindor common room was the opposite of Slytherin's. The dungeons were all dark leather and green shadows. This place was warm colors and soft furniture. Red and gold everywhere. Tapestries of lions. A fire crackling in a massive stone hearth. It felt wrong to Harry. Too warm. Too bright. The cold in his blood pushed back against it, making his skin prickle. Ron's dormitory is upstairs, Hermione said. Boys sighed. Third door on the left. Can you get us in? The stairs are enchanted against girls. But you in. She hesitated, looking at Daphne. I mean, Harry can go. I'll have to stay here. I'm not a girl, Daphne said flatly. Hermione blinked. What? The stairs are enchanted against female-presenting individuals who identify as such. The magic reads intent, not biology. Daphne was already heading for the staircase. I have no particular attachment to gender. The stairs won't stop me. Harry stared at her. Is that true? We'll find out. She put her foot on the first step. Nothing happened. Second step. Third. The staircase remained solid beneath her. Hermione's mouth was hanging open. That's not in any book I've read. That's because the books were written by people who couldn't imagine the distinction. Daphne looked back at them. Are you coming or not? Harry followed her up the stairs, leaving Hermione sputtering in the common room. The third-year boys' dormitory was messy and loud, even empty. Posters on the walls, clothes on the floor, the smell of teenage boy, which Harry was unfortunately familiar with from his own dormitory. Ron's bed was obvious. It was the one with Chudley Cannon's post. Plastered across the headboard and a battered chess set on the nightstand. Harry started searching. What are we looking for? Daphne asked. She was going through Ron's trunk with clinical efficiency. I don't know. Something that feels wrong. Something that doesn't belong. That describes half the contents of this trunk. Harry checked under the bed. Under the mattress. In the drawers of the nightstand. Nothing. Then he felt it. A pulse of something dark, coming from the wall beside Ron's bed. He pressed his hand against the stone. Cold seeped through, but not his cold. Something else. Omething that tasted like sulfur and ash. There's a loose stone, he said. Here. Daphne came to stand beside him. Together, they pried the stone free. Behind it was a small cavity. Inside the cavity was a box. Harry pulled it out. It was wooden, old, covered in symbols he didn't recognize. The dark pulse was stronger now, making his teeth ache. Don't open it, Daphne said quickly. I wasn't going to. The symbols are binding runes. Old ones. This box was designed to contain something dangerous. She leaned closer, studying the markings. It's been opened recently. See, the seal is broken. Harry looked. She was right. A thin crack ran along one edge of the lid, and the wood around it was splintered like someone had pried it open with a knife. Ron, Harry said, he must have found it with your things. Thought it was treasure or evidence or something valuable. Daphne's voice was grim, and when he opened it, he let something out. A sound came from downstairs. A crash, followed by Hermione screaming. They ran. The common room was chaos. Furniture was overturned. The fire had gone out, replaced by a cold that made even Harry shiver. And in the center of the room, surrounded by swirling shadows, was something that had once been Ron Weasley. He was floating 3 feet off the ground. His eyes were black, completely black, no whites or iris visible. His mouth was open in a silent scream, and from his chest, tendrils of darkness were spreading out like roots, reaching toward Hermione who was backed against the wall. Ron, Harry shouted. The thing wearing Ron's face turned toward him. When it spoke, the voice was wrong, too deep, too old, like stones grinding together. Air of the solstice, it said. At last, the temperature dropped another 20 degrees. Frost crept across the windows, the furniture, the floor. What did you do to him? Harry demanded. I did nothing. He invited me in. The thing smiled with Ron's mouth, and there was nothing human in the expression. He opened the box. He wanted power, recognition, to be special, like his brothers, like his best friend who abandoned him. The smile widened. I simply granted his wish. Let him go. Why would I do that? He makes such a lovely host. So much anger, so much jealousy, so much delicious resentment. The thing floated closer. He blames you, you know, for everything, for being special when he's ordinary, for rejecting his friendship, for existing while he feels invisible. Harry's hands were shaking. Not from cold. That's not true. Ron was my friend. Was he, or did you just need someone simple to make you feel normal? The black eyes glittered. I know all about you, young king. I've been watching since you arrived, waiting for you to accept your responsibilities. And when you refused, the thing spread Ron's arms wide. I found another way. The corrupted wishes. That was you. Of course. The power was there, just waiting to be used. All those desperate little mortals, wanting things so badly they'd accept any price. I simply interpreted their requests. Creatively, Harry thought of Justin, floating helplessly. Of the invisible girl. Of all the students whose lives had been twisted by this creature wearing his friend's face. Rage built in his chest. Cold rage. The kind that burned. Get out of him. The thing laughed. Ron's voice, but wrong. Make me. Harry moved. He didn't think about it. Didn't plan. Just reached into the sack at his hip and pulled. His hand came out holding something. A chain, silver and cold, glowing with pale light. He didn't know what it was or where it came from. But the sack had given it to him, and that was enough. He threw. The chain wrapped around the floating figure, binding Ron's arms to his sides. The thing screamed, an inhuman sound that shattered every window in the common room. You dare. I dare. Harry's voice was cold, colder than he'd ever heard it. You're part of me, part of my power, and I'm taking you back. The thing thrashed against the chains. You can't. You rejected me. You refused your responsibility. I changed my mind. Harry walked forward, one step at a time. The cold radiating off him was intense now. Frost forming on his eyebrows, ice crystals in his hair. The sack pulsed against his hip, warm and approving. The gift giver and the shadow are supposed to be one, he said. I understand that now. You punish the wicked. I reward the good. Together, we balance the scales. Pretty words. The thing was struggling less now, watching him with those black eyes. But you don't have the strength. You don't have the will. You're just a boy. A broken, lonely boy who couldn't even keep one friend. Maybe. Harry reached out and placed his hand on Ron's chest, directly over his heart. But I'm also the Winter King. And I want my shadow back. He pulled. The world went white. Pain. That was the first thing. Pain like he'd never felt. Like his soul was being torn in half and stitched back together. Cold and heat and pressure and a sound like screaming that might have been him or might have been something else. Then darkness. Then silence. Harry opened his eyes. He was lying on the floor of the common room. Everything hurt. His head, his chest, his bones. The sack was still at his hip, warm and patient. Harry. Daphne was kneeling beside him. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. Behind her, Hermione was helping Ron sit up. Ron. Not the thing. Just Ron. Looking confused and scared and very, very human. Did it work? Harry asked. His voice came out as a croak. Something worked. Daphne helped him sit up. The darkness is gone. Whatever was possessing Ron, it went into you. Harry looked down at his hands. They were shaking. And there, on his left palm, was a new mark. A symbol he didn't recognize. Black as coal against his pale skin. The shadow, he said. You absorbed it, took it back into yourself. Daphne's voice was strange. Harry, your eyes, what about them? She didn't answer, just pulled a small mirror from her pocket and held it up. Harry looked at his reflection. His eyes, normally green, now had flecks of red in them. Like embers buried in forest fire. And his skin, always pale, now had a faint darkness to it. A shadow under the surface, barely visible but definitely there. The gift giver and the shadow, he said slowly. Together. Harry. Ron's voice, weak and scared. Harry, what happened? I can't remember. Harry turned to look at his former friend. Ron was pale, shaking, tears streaming down his freckled face. He looked terrified. Lost. You opened a box, Harry said. Something got into you, made you do things. I hurt people. I remember. Flashes. Faces. Screaming. Ron's voice broke. Oh God, I hurt people. It wasn't you, but it was my hands. My body. Ron looked down at himself in horror. The wishes. The twisted wishes. That was me. Harry hesitated. The honest answer was yes. Ron had been the host, the anchor. Without him, the shadow wouldn't have been able to act so freely. But looking at the broken boy in front of him, Harry couldn't say that. It was the shadow, he said. Using you. You didn't have a choice. But I let it in. I opened the box. Ron was crying harder now. I was so angry. At you, at everyone. I wanted to be special, Harry finished. Ron nodded miserably. Harry should have been angry. Ron had betrayed him, stolen from him, tried to turn the whole school against him. But looking at him now, all Harry felt was tired. We all want to be special, he said. That's not a crime. But what I did, wasn't you. Harry reached out and put a hand on Ron's shoulder. The shadow is gone now. Back where it belongs. Whatever happens next, you're not responsible for what it did while it was inside you. Ron looked up at him. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face blotchy with tears. But there was something there that hadn't been before. Something that looked almost like hope. You really mean that? I really mean it. Ron let out a shaky breath. I'm sorry, Harry, for everything. For going through your things, for trying to turn people against you, for all of it. I was jealous and stupid and I didn't understand what was happening to you. I know. Can you ever forgive me? Harry thought about it, really thought. The anger was still there. Buried under everything else. Ron had hurt him, had made an already impossible situation even worse. Had nearly gotten people killed by opening that box. But he'd also been used. Manipulated. The shadow had found his weaknesses and exploited them, just like it had exploited the wishes of all those other students. I can try, Harry said finally. But it's going to take time. Things can't just go back to how they were. Quote. Ron nodded. I understand. Whatever you need. However long it takes. Good. Harry stood up, wincing at the pain in his muscles. Right now, I need to talk to Dumbledore. Tell him what happened. Figure out how to fix the students who got hurt. I'm coming with you, Hermione said. She'd been quiet through the whole exchange, watching with an expression Harry couldn't read. You promised. I did. Harry looked at Daphne. You too. Wouldn't miss it. The four of them left Gryffindor Tower together. The fat lady squawked in outrage at their passing, but nobody stopped to explain. Dumbledore's office was warm and bright, filled with the soft whirring of his silver instruments. The headmaster sat behind his desk, his face grave as Harry finished explaining. And you absorbed the shadow entity directly into yourself? Dumbledore asked. I didn't have a choice. It was the only way to stop it. There's always a choice, Harry. The old wizard's eyes were troubled. What you've done, combining both aspects of this ancient power, it's unprecedented. And extremely dangerous. More dangerous than letting the shadow run loose. Dumbledore didn't answer. The students who were affected, Hermione said. Can they be helped now? If the shadow is contained? Perhaps. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. The corrupted wishes were granted using Harry's power. Filtered through the shadow. Now that the two are reunited. He looked at Harry. You might be able to undo what was done. How? The same way you absorbed the shadow. By willing it. By reaching into the affected students and pulling the corruption out. Harry thought about Justin, floating helplessly. About the invisible girl, the porcelain-skinned Hufflepuff, all the others. Could he really fix them? I'll try, he said. Not tonight. Dumbledore stood. You're exhausted. Whatever integration is happening between you and the shadow, it needs time. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, we'll begin the healing process. Quote. Harry wanted to argue. People were suffering. Every hour they spent waiting was another hour of torment for the victims. But his body was screaming at him. His vision was blurring. He could barely stand. Fine, he said. Tomorrow. Dumbledore walked them to the door. As Harry passed, the old wizard put a hand on his shoulder. Harry, he said quietly. What you did tonight, it was brave. Foolish, perhaps, but brave. You saw a problem and you faced it head on, regardless of the cost to yourself. I didn't see another option. There are always other options. You chose this one because you believed it was right. Dumbledore's eyes were soft now, almost gentle. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you worthy of the power you carry. I don't feel worthy. None of us do. In the end, Dumbledore released his shoulder. Get some rest. We have difficult work ahead. Harry walked back to the dungeons in a daze. Daphne stayed with him, a silent presence at his side. She didn't ask questions, didn't offer comfort. Just walked with him through the empty corridors, her shoulder occasionally brushing his. They stopped outside the entrance to Slytherin. You should sleep, Daphne said. I don't think I can. Try anyway. She hesitated, then did something unexpected. She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm against his cold skin. You did good tonight, Potter. Whatever happens next, remember that. Thanks. Harry looked at their joined hands. Daphne, yes. Why are you really helping me? And don't give me the quiet place speech again. There's more to it than that. Daphne was silent for a long moment. Her face was unreadable in the dim light of the corridor. My family has a curse, she said finally. An ancient one. It's why I learned occlumency so young. Why I can't feel emotions the way other people do. She paused. We're called the Greengrass because we're supposed to be neutral. Cold. Separate from the passions of normal wizards. That sounds lonely. It is. Her grip on his hand tightened. But then you came along. You, with your impossible powers and your cosmic responsibilities and complete inability to hear what I want. And I realized. She trailed off. Realized what? That I don't have to be alone. She met his eyes. Neither do you. Harry didn't know what to say. The moment stretched between them. Fragile and strange. Then Daphne pulled her hand away. Sleep, Potter. We have work to do tomorrow. She walked away before he could respond. Harry watched her go. Then, he turned and entered the Slytherin common room, his mind spinning with everything that had happened. The shadow was inside him now. Part of him. He could feel it, a darkness curled up in the corner of his soul, waiting. Not hostile, not anymore, just there, the gift giver and the shadow. Together at last, he climbed the stairs to his dormitory and collapsed on his bed without changing. Sleep took him almost instantly. His dreams were dark and cold and full of chains. But for the first time in weeks, they weren't nightmares. They were memories, ancient ones. 1,000 years of gift givers, stretching back into the mists of time. Each one carrying the same power. Each one struggling with the same burden. Each one eventually passing it on to another, starting the cycle anew. Harry watched them all, these predecessors he'd never known. Some were kind, some were cruel, some managed to balance the light and dark within them. Others were consumed by one side or the other. The last one, the one who came before Harry, had been different. He'd tried to separate the two aspects permanently. To cut the shadow loose and be only the giver. It had worked, for a while. But the shadow had grown wild, dangerous. Unable to be controlled without a host. So the old gift giver had hidden it. Locked it away in a box bound with ancient runes. And then he'd died, passing the power to a baby boy in Surrey who had no idea what he was inheriting. Harry watched his own life through new eyes. The cold that followed him everywhere. The wants that pressed against his mind. The snow owl, the chimney transport, the sack. All of it had been preparation. The power, teaching him what he needed to know. And now the cycle was complete. He was the gift giver and the shadow. Light and dark, reward and punishment. All he had to do was learn to use it. Harry woke to pale light filtering through the lake green windows of his dormitory. His body ached, but differently than before. Not the exhaustion of overuse, but the soreness of growth. Like his muscles were rebuilding themselves stronger. He sat up and looked at his hands. The mark on his left palm was still there, darker now, more defined. A Simbo. L that looked like two figures intertwined, one made of light and one of shadow. He felt different too. The voices were still there, the constant pressure of everyone's wants, but they were clearer now. Easier to understand. He could pick out individual desires instead of being overwhelmed by the crowd. And underneath it all, he could feel the shadow. Not as a separate entity, but as a part of himself. The part that judged, that weighed, that decided who deserved what. It wasn't evil, he could see that now. It was just necessary. Without punishment, reward meant nothing. Without darkness, light couldn't exist. Balance. Harry got dressed and headed for the hospital wing. Madame Pomfrey was waiting for him. The headmaster said you'd be coming, she said. Her voice was brisk but not unkind. The patients are this way. She led him to a long ward where 7 beds were occupied. 7 students, each suffering from a wish twisted into a curse. Justin Finch Fletchley, still floating against his restraints. The invisible girl, now just a shimmer in the air. The porcelain Hufflepuff, cracking every time she moved. All of them, waiting. Waiting for him. Harry walked to Justin's bed first. The boy's eyes were closed. His face peaceful despite the horror of his situation. "What do I do?" Harry asked. "I don't know," Madame Pomfrey admitted. "The headmaster believes you can reverse the curses by willing it, somehow. But nobody's ever tried this before." Harry looked at Justin, felt for his want, buried under layers of fear and confusion. He wanted to feel grounded. To have weight. To be real. Harry put his hand on Justin's chest. Cold flowed out of him. Not the harsh cold of winter, but something softer. Like the first frost of autumn, gentle and transformative. He thought about ground. About weight. About the feeling of feet on solid earth. Justin gasped. And dropped. He fell onto the bed with a thump, suddenly, completely solid. His eyes flew open, and he stared at Harry with wild confusion. "What? How?" "You're okay," Harry said. "It's over." Justin started to cry. Harry moved to the next bed. It took hours. Each reversal was different. Each student needed something unique. A specific understanding of what they'd wanted and how it had been twisted. The invisible girl needed to be seen. The porcelain Hufflepuff needed to be soft. The glowing boy needed to be dim. By the time he finished the last one, Harry was shaking with exhaustion. But it was a good exhaustion. The exhaustion of work done well. The shadow inside him purred with satisfaction. Balance. Dumbledore was waiting in the corridor outside the hospital wing. "Remarkable," the old wizard said. "Truly remarkable. I didn't believe it was possible." "Neither did I. How do you feel?" Harry thought about it. Different. But not bad different. Just. He struggled to find the words. "More complete, I guess." Dumbledore nodded slowly. "The integration is proceeding, then. The two aspects are becoming one. Is that dangerous?" "Everything about your situation is dangerous, Harry. But this particular development." The headmaster smiled slightly. "I think it might be the best possible outcome. A gift giver who can balance both sides of his nature. Who can give and judge in equal measure. I still don't know what I'm doing. None of us do, at your age. The difference is, your mistakes have larger consequences." Dumbledore put a hand on his shoulder. "But you've proven today that you can fix those mistakes. That you have the will and the power to set things right. Only because Daphne and Hermione helped. And you had the wisdom to accept their help. That's not nothing." Dumbledore released him. "Go eat something. Rest. You've earned it." Harry started to walk away, then stopped. "Professor." "Yes. The ring you offered me. The one that would suppress my powers. Is that still an option?" Dumbledore's expression flickered. "If you want it to be. Though I suspect you already know you won't need it." Harry thought about the power inside him. The cold and the dark, balanced now, working together instead of fighting. "No," he said, "I don't think I will." He walked away, leaving Dumbledore standing in the corridor with something that looked almost like pride on his ancient face. The great hall was full when Harry arrived for dinner. Students at every table, talking and laughing and eating. The noise of wants was overwhelming for a moment, but Harry pushed through it, finding the quiet space in his mind where he could think. He sat at the Slytherin table, alone as usual. But tonight, it didn't feel as lonely. Daphne appeared a few minutes later, sliding into the seat across from him. "I heard you healed them all. News travels fast. Slytherin Gossip Network." She loaded her plate with food. "How are you feeling?" "Tired. But good." Harry picked at his own dinner. Daphne. What you said last night. About not having to be alone." She went still. Her pale eyes found his. "What about it?" "I was thinking, maybe we could not be alone together. If that makes sense." Daphne was quiet for a long moment. Harry could feel his heart pounding. Feel the cold spreading under his fingers on the table. Then she smiled. It was small, barely there, but it transformed her face. "That makes perfect sense, Potter." They ate in comfortable silence. On the other side of the hall, Ron Weasley watched them from the Gryffindor table. His expression was complicated, sad, but also something else. Something that looked like acceptance. Harry caught his eye and nodded. Ron nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a start. Outside the windows, snow began to fall. The first snow of the season, soft and white and pure. Harry felt it like a song in his blood. The winter calling to him. The power stirring. The longest night was coming. And this time, he'd be ready. In his pocket, the sack pulsed warmly. In his chest, the shadow slept peacefully. And somewhere deep inside, the gift giver smiled. Balance. At last, December 21st arrived with a silence that felt like the world holding its breath. Harry woke before dawn, pulled Fr. Own sleep by something that wasn't a sound or a feeling but a certainty. Like knowing your own name. Like knowing the sun would rise. The solstice was here. He lay in his bed in the Slytherin dormitory, staring at the green-tinged ceiling. Feeling the power inside him stir and stretch like a cat waking from a long nap. The cold in his blood was different today. Sharper. More alive. The shadow stirred too. Not aggressively. Not trying to escape or take over. Just aware. Alert. Like it knew something was coming. Harry got dressed in the dark, moving quietly past Draco's snoring form and Blaze's empty bed. The common room was deserted at this hour. The fire burned down to embers, the lake outside the windows still and black. He climbed the stairs to the main castle. The corridors were empty. No students, no ghosts, no portraits awake to gossip. Just Harry and the cold and the growing certainty that today was going to be very, very bad. He found Daphne in the room of requirement. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by books and notes and the remnants of what looked like an all-night research session. Dark circles ringed her pale eyes. Her blonde hair was escaping from its usual braid. "You felt it too," she said when he entered. "Hard to miss. The solstice." Daphne closed the book in her lap. "The longest night of the year. The peak of winter's power." She looked up at him. "And the peak of yours." Quote. Harry sat down across from her. The sack was at his hip, warm and patient as always. The mark on his palm was darker today, almost black against his pale skin. "Something's wrong," he said. "I know." Daphne pulled a piece of parchment from the pile beside her. "I've been going through the oldest texts I could find. The ones that talk about the shadow as a separate entity from the gift giver. I thought we established that I absorbed it. That it's part of me now. You absorbed what was in Ron. The fragment that had escaped and found a host." Daphne's voice was carefully controlled, but Harry could see the fear behind her mask. "But according to these texts, that wasn't the whole shadow. It was just a piece. A tendril." Harry's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "The shadow is ancient, Harry. Older than the gift-giver mythology. It's been building up power for centuries, every time a previous gift-giver suppressed it instead of integrating it." She handed him the parchment. "The last true manifestation was over 1,000 years ago. It nearly destroyed Northern Europe." Harry looked at the parchment. It was a woodcut illustration, old and faded, showing a massive horned figure standing over burning villages. People ran screaming in the foreground. The sky was filled with chains and ash. "The Krampus," he said. "In its full form. Not a spirit possessing a student. Not a fragment twisting wishes. The actual entity, manifest and unleashed." Daphne's hands were shaking slightly. "And according to my calculations, the conditions for that manifestation are going to be met tonight." "What conditions?" "The longest night. A gift giver who has partially integrated but not fully mastered the shadow. And," she hesitated. "And what?" "A sacrifice. Someone who represents everything the shadow hates. Someone pure and generous and full of hope." Harry thought about the students in the castle. Hundreds of children, all of them wanting things. All of them carrying some mix of good and bad in their hearts. Who would qualify? Daphne didn't answer, but she pulled another piece of parchment from her pile and handed it to him. It was a list of names. Students who had been identified as potential targets based on personality assessments and magical resonance scans. Most of them Harry didn't recognize. But one name stood out. Hermione Granger. "No," Harry said. "I didn't choose her. The magic did." Daphne's voice was flat. "She's the most relentlessly hopeful person in this castle. Despite being bullied, despite being an outsider, she still believes in the best of everyone. She still thinks hard work and kindness will be rewarded. That's not a flaw. To the shadow, it's an abomination." Daphne stood up and started pacing. "The Krampus punishes the wicked. But it also resents the good. The truly good. The ones who make its job harder by refusing to be corrupted." Harry looked at the illustration again. At the burning villages and fleeing crowds. At the massive, monstrous figure at the center of it all. How do we stop it? I don't know if we can. Daphne stopped pacing. But I know we have to try. They spent the morning preparing. Daphne gathered supplies from the room of requirement. Warming charms, protective amulets, anything that might help against the cold and dark that was coming. Harry practiced with the sack, pulling out item after item to see what it could provide. The sack was generous today. Chains of silver, ropes of golden light, toys that hummed with protective magic. A cloak made of something that felt like frozen moonlight. It knows, Harry said, pulling out a sword that glittered with ice crystals. The sack knows what's coming. It's part of you. Of course it knows. Daphne examined one of the protective amulets. These are old. Pre-Hogwarts old. Where is the sack getting them? I don't know. It just gives me what I need. The gift giver's power. She hung the amulet around her neck. Intent-based creation. You think of a need, it provides a gift. Harry thought about that. About the power he carried and how little he still understood it. We should warn the teachers, he said. And tell them what? That a demon from pre-Christian mythology is going to manifest in the castle tonight and try to sacrifice their star pupil. Daphne's voice was sharp. They'll think we're insane. Or worse, they'll try to interfere and get themselves killed. We can't fight this alone. We might have to. She looked at him, her pale eyes hard. Unless you have a better idea. Harry did have an idea. He just wasn't sure it was a good one. Dumbledore, he said. Daphne's expression flickered. The headmaster. He knows about the old magic. He might know something that can help. He also wanted to suppress your powers. To put that ring on you and lock everything away. That was before. Before I integrated the shadow. Before I started to understand what I am. Harry stood up, the sack heavy at his hip. He deserves to know what's coming. Even if he can't help, he should have the chance to protect the students. Daphne was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Fine, but I'm coming with you. Dumbledore's office was warm and quiet, the silver instruments whirring softly and the phoenix on its perch watching them with ancient eyes. The headmaster listened without eye, interrupting as Harry explained what they'd discovered. The true nature of the shadow. The conditions for its manifestation. The threat to Hermione and potentially the entire school. When Harry finished, Dumbledore was silent for a long time. You're certain about this? He asked finally. As certain as I can be. The texts are clear. The solstice, a partial integration, a sacrifice of hope. All the pieces are in place. Dumbledore stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was gray and heavy, promising snow. I have lived a long time, Harry. I have seen many dark things. But I confess, is not a threat I ever expected to face. You believe us. I believe you believe it. And I have learned to trust your instincts when it comes to this ancient magic. He turned back to face them. What do you need? Evacuate the castle. Get the students somewhere safe. Dumbledore shook his head slowly. That may not be possible. The wards of Hogwarts are designed to protect, but they can also trap. If the Krampus manifests within the grounds, it will be able to prevent anyone from leaving. Then what do? We prepare. The old wizard's eyes were hard now, determined. We gather the staff. We arm ourselves with whatever defenses we can muster. And we pray that you, Harry, are strong enough to face what's coming. And if I'm not? Dumbledore didn't answer. The day passed in a blur of activity. Professors were briefed. Not on everything, but enough to know that something dangerous was expected that night. The students were told that a special event was being held in the Great Hall, mandatory attendance. No exceptions. Harry watched the preparations with a growing sense of dread. The teachers moved quickly, setting up protective barriers and escape routes. But he could see the doubt in their eyes. They didn't fully believe. How could they? At 6 o'clock, the students began filing into the Great Hall. The space had been transformed. The 4 house tables had been pushed back against the walls, creating an open area in the center. The enchanted ceiling showed the darkening sky outside, thick clouds rolling in from the north. Harry stood near the entrance with Daphne, watching the students pour in. Laughing, talking, complaining about being forced to attend on the last night before Christmas break. They had no idea. Hermione walked past them, a stack of books in her arms as always. She nodded at Harry, a small acknowledgement of their uneasy alliance. He wanted to warn her. to tell her to run, but he knew it wouldn't help. If the Krampus wanted her, it would find her. Ron came in with the other Gryffindors, staying close to Neville Longbottom. He hadn't spoken to Harry since the night of the possession, keeping his distance with an expression that mixed guilt and fear. Harry understood. Some wounds took time to heal. By 7, the hall was full. Over 300 students, plus the staff, all gathered in one place. Perfect targets. Dumbledore stood at the head of the room, his voice amplified by magic. Thank you all for coming. I know you were expecting a celebration tonight, and I promise there will be one. But first, I need to ask for your cooperation. Harry stopped listening. Something was wrong. The temperature was dropping. Not his cold, not the familiar chill that followed him everywhere. Something else. Something hungry. He looked at Daphne. She felt it too, her face going pale. It's starting, she whispered. The torches along the walls flickered. Went out. The enchanted ceiling, which had been showing gray clouds, suddenly turned black. Not night sky black, empty black. The black of nothing at all. Students started screaming. Everyone stay calm. McGonagall's voice, sharp and commanding. Stay where you are. But it was too late for calm. The cold hit like a wave. Not cold weather cold. Cold like the void between stars. Cold like death itself reaching out to touch the living. Harry felt it wash over him, through him. And for a moment he thought it would freeze him solid despite his power. Then the warmth of the sack pulsed against his hip, and the cold passed around him instead, a river flowing around a stone. He opened his eyes. The great hall had become a frozen hell. Ice covered everything. The walls, the floor, the ceiling. The house tables were encased in crystalline prisons. The windows had shattered inward, letting in wind that howled like a living thing. And the students were frozen, not dead. Harry could feel their wants, their fears, their desperate screaming pleas for help. But they were trapped, each one sealed in a coffin of ice, preserved and helpless. All of them except a handful. Daphne was beside him, shielded by the amulet she wore. McGonagall was still standing, above. Of heat around her generated by some powerful charm. Dumbledore was at the far end of the hall, his wand blazing with light. And Hermione Granger was kneeling in the center of the room, untouched by the ice. Staring at something that was rising from the floor. The Krampus. It wasn't a creature. It wasn't a monster. It was wrong in a way that hurt to look at. Too tall, too thin, made of shadows and chains and the smell of burning. Its face was a nightmare of angles and teeth, and where its eyes should have been, there were pits of red flame. Air of the solstice. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It rattled the ice on the walls and made the frozen students shudder in their prisons. I have been waiting so long to meet you. Harry stepped forward. The sack was burning against his hip now, almost too hot to touch. The mark on his palm was glowing, black light pulsing in time with his heartbeat. Let them go, he said. The Krampus laughed. It was a horrible sound, like bones breaking and children crying. Let them go. These are the wicked, little king. The selfish, the cruel, the ones who have never known true generosity. Its voice dripped with contempt. They deserve their punishment. They're children. They're human. Greed and envy and wrath run through their veins. The Krampus moved closer to Hermione, who was still kneeling, still frozen in place by something Harry couldn't see. All except this one. This bright, burning spark of hope. She actually believes the world can be good. A clawed hand reached toward Hermione's face. Harry moved. He didn't think about it. Didn't plan. Just reached into the sack and pulled, and his hand came out holding something that blazed with golden light. A gift. The purest gift. The concentrated essence of joy and giving and everything the Krampus wasn't. He threw it. The golden light hit the Krampus like a bomb. The creature screamed, recoiling from Hermione, its form wavering and flickering. Steam rose from where the light had touched it. Shadow flesh burning away. You dare. I dare. Harry was moving forward, pulling more gifts from the sack, throwing them one after another. Each one burned the Krampus, pushed it back, made it shriek with rage. You're part of me, part of my power, and I'm not going to let you hurt anyone else. Part of you. The Krampus was laughing again, even as it burned. Foolish child, I am not part of you. You are part of me. It struck, not with claws or teeth. With cold. The same void cold that had frozen the hall, concentrated into a lance of pure nothing aimed directly at Harry's heart. He caught it, not with his hands, with his power. The ice in his blood reached out and grabbed the cold, absorbed it, made it part of himself. It hurt. God, it hurt, like swallowing fire. But he held on. I am the Winter King, he said through gritted teeth. I am the gift giver and the shadow. I am both halves of the whole. You are a child playing at godhood. The Krampus loomed over him, massive and terrible. You have not earned this power. You have not suffered enough to understand it. Then teach me. Harry stopped fighting. He stopped pushing back against the cold street. Stopped throwing gifts to drive the Krampus away. Instead, he opened himself. Let the power flow through him instead of against him. The Krampus froze. What are you doing? Accepting you. Harry spread his arms. You're right. I've been fighting this since I got my letter. Fighting the cold, fighting the voices, fighting the shadow. Trying to be normal when normal was never an option. You cannot accept me. I am punishment. I am judgment. I am everything you fear about yourself. I know. Harry stepped forward, into the Krampus's space, into the heart of the cold. That's why I have to. He reached out and touched the creature's chest. The world exploded. Harry was floating in darkness. Not the cold darkness of the void, but something older. Something that felt like the space between heartbeats, the pause between breaths. The silence before creation. He could see them. All of them. Every gift giver who had ever lived, stretching back through millennia. Men and women and beings that weren't quite either. All carrying the same power, all struggling with the same burden. And beyond them, something else. The source. The original. The first winter, when the world was new and the darken. Was absolute and something had reached out and said, let there be light. The gift giver was born from that moment. The need to give warmth and hope in the face of endless cold. And with it, inevitably, came the shadow. The recognition that not everyone deserved warmth. That some should be left in the dark. Two sides of the same coin. Light and dark. Give and take. Reward and punishment. Balance. Harry understood now. Really understood, in a way he hadn't before. The Krampus wasn't evil, it was necessary. Without judgment, giving was meaningless. Without punishment, there could be no true reward. The system only worked if both halves existed in harmony. And for too long, they hadn't. Generation after generation of gift givers had rejected the shadow, suppressed it, tried to be purely good. And the shadow had grown stronger, angrier, more twisted, until it had become the monster that now threatened to destroy everything. It was time to end that cycle. Harry reached out, not with his hands but with something deeper. The core of his power. The place where the cold lived. I accept you, he said. I accept all of it. The giving and the taking. The light and the dark. The joy and the judgment. I am not two halves fighting each other. I am one whole, complete. The darkness shattered. Harry opened his eyes. He was standing in the great hall, his hand still pressed against where the Krampus's chest had been. But the monster was gone. No, not gone. Absorbed. He could feel it inside him now, curled up with the rest of his power, finally at peace. Finally home. The ice on the walls began to melt. The frozen students began to stir. And Harry had changed. He looked down at his hands. They were pale, paler than before, with a shimmer under the skin that glowed faintly in the darkness. His fingers were longer, more elegant, tipped with nails that looked like ice crystals. He reached up and touched his hair. It was white, pure white, like fresh snow. And when he looked at his reflection in a shard of broken ice, his eyes were different, not green anymore, silver, with flecks of gold that swirled like snowflakes in a globe. Daphne was standing a few feet away, staring at him with an expression that mixed awe and fear. I'm okay, he said. His voice was different too. Deeper, more resonant, like it carried the weight of centuries. I'm better than okay. You look different. I know. He turned away from his reflection and looked at the hall. The students were waking up, confused and scared but alive. Professors were moving among them, checking for injuries, offering comfort. McGonagall had Hermione, who was crying into her shoulder. The longest night was over. And the Winter King had been born. The cleanup took hours. Harry helped where he could, using his new understanding of his power to melt the remaining ice and warm the terrified students. The teachers watched him with wary eyes, clearly unsettled by his transformation, but no one tried to stop him. Dumbledore found him near midnight, standing alone by one of the shattered windows. "You did it," the old wizard said. "I absorbed it, made it part of myself." Harry looked at his pale hands. "I'm not entirely human anymore, am I?" "I don't think you ever were." "Not really." Dumbledore stood beside him, looking out at the snow-covered grounds. "The power chose you before you were born. You were always meant for this." Quote, "That doesn't make it easier." "No, it rarely does." The headmaster was quiet for a moment. "What will you do now?" "I don't know." Harry thought about the weight inside him. The power, the responsibility. The gift giver has duties. People to help, wishes to grant, judgments to make, and Voldemort. Harry had almost forgotten about the dark wizard who had killed his parents. The one who was supposed to be his great enemy. The prophecy that had hung over his head since before he could remember. It seemed so small now. So insignificant. "Voldemort is a human problem," he said slowly. "Let humans deal with him. And if they can't, then I'll help, but not as a soldier in someone else's war." Harry met Dumbledore's eyes. "I'm not your weapon, Professor. I'm not anyone's weapon. I have my own responsibilities now." Dumbledore nodded slowly. "I understand. Though I confess, I had hoped." "I know what you hoped." Harry's voice was gentle but firm. "You wanted a hero, a champion to stand against the darkness. But I'm not that. I'm something older, something that exists outside your wars and politics. The Winter King." "Yes." They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the snow fall. "Will you stay at Hogwarts?" Dumbledore asked finally. "For now. I still have a lot to learn. About my powers, about the history of the gift givers, about..." He trailed off. About Daphne. About the strange connection that had grown between them. About the possibility of something that felt almost like a future. "Very well." Dumbledore stepped back. "Know that you are always welcome here, Harry. Whatever you become, whatever path you choose, Hogwarts will be your home." "Thank you, Professor." The old wizard walked away, leaving Harry alone with the snow and the silence. A few minutes later, Daphne found him. She didn't say anything at first. Just stood beside him, her shoulder almost touching his, her breath making white clouds in the cold air that no longer affected either of them. "You're beautiful," she said finally. Harry looked at her. "What?" "Your new form. The white hair, the silver eyes. She hesitated. "It's beautiful. Terrifying. But beautiful." "Is that a compliment?" "Take it however you want." They stood in comfortable silence for a while. The snow was falling harder now, covering the damage to the grounds, hiding the scars of the battle. "What happens now?" Daphne asked. "I don't know. Everything is different." Harry looked at his hands again. At the power that hummed just beneath the surface. "I'm different. Does that scare you?" "Yes." He turned to face her. "But not as much as it did. I think I'm finally starting to understand who I am." "And who is that?" "The gift giver. The Winter King. The one who grants wishes and passes judgment." He smiled slightly. "Also Harry Potter. Slytherin first year, absolutely terrible at potions." Daphne laughed. It was a small sound, barely there, but it was real. "You're not that bad at potions." Snape would disagree. Snape disagrees with oxygen. It's not personal. They laughed together, and for a moment, despite everything that had happened, Harry felt almost normal. Then Daphne's expression shifted, became serious. "Harry, yeah, I meant what I said before. About not being alone." She was looking at him with those pale eyes, the ones that had always been able to see through his defenses. "Whatever you're becoming, whatever responsibilities you have now, you don't have to face them by yourself." "Daphne, I'm not asking for anything. I'm not even sure what I want." She took a breath. "But I know that I don't want to go back to being silent and cold and separate from everything. I know that whatever this is between us, it matters." Harry looked at her, at this strange, brilliant girl who had stood by him through everything. Who had helped him understand what he was. Who had never asked for anything except his company. "It matters to me too," he said. "Good." She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm against his cold skin. "Then we'll figure out the rest together." They stood there, hand in hand, watching the snow fall. The longest night was over. Dawn was coming, and whatever the future held, they would face it together. The Great Hall was repaired by morning. Dumbledore had worked through the night with the other professors, using magic Harry didn't fully understand to restore the windows and walls and frozen decorations. By the time the students woke up for breakfast, there was almost no sign of what had happened. Almost. They looked at Harry differently now. The ones who had been frozen, who had seen the Krampus manifest and felt the void cold in their bones. They watched him with a mix of fear and something that might have been gratitude. He'd saved them. They knew that much, even if they didn't understand how or why. Ron approached him in the corridor after breakfast. "Can we talk?" Harry nodded and followed him to an empty classroom. Ron looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, his freckles standing out against pale skin. He'd been crying recently, the evidence was still visible on his cheeks. "I heard what happened," Ron said. "Last night, the demon thing. You stopped it." "I did. And you changed." Ron's eyes moved over Harry's white hair, his silver eyes, the new grace in his movements. You're not really human anymore, are you?" "Not entirely." Ron was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was small. "I'm sorry, Harry, for everything. For being jealous. For going through your things, for letting that thing into me." His voice cracked. "I almost got people killed. You didn't know. That doesn't make it okay." Ron's hands were shaking. "I was so angry, so convinced that you were the problem. And all along, I was the one making everything worse." Harry thought about forgiveness, about judgment, about the power inside him that could see into people's hearts and know their true natures. He looked at Ron and saw what was really there. Not a bad person, not a villain, just a scared kid who wanted to be special and Dee had made terrible choices in pursuit of that dream. "You made mistakes," Harry said. "Big ones. People got hurt because of what you did." Ron flinched. "But," Harry continued, "you didn't mean for any of it to happen. You were manipulated by something ancient and evil. And when you realized what was happening, you felt genuine remorse. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you understand." Harry met Ron's eyes. The shadow judges people based on their hearts, not their actions. Actions can be corrected, compensated for, but a corrupt heart never truly changes. "And my heart." "Your heart is good, Ron. Jealous and insecure and sometimes petty, but good at its core. You want to help people. You want to do the right thing. You just lost your way for a while." Ron was crying again, tears streaming down his face. "I don't deserve forgiveness." "Maybe not." Harry put a hand on his shoulder. "But I'm giving it anyway. That's what the gift giver does. We give people what they need, even when they haven't earned it." Ron looked at him for a long moment. Then he did something Harry didn't expect. He hugged him. It was awkward and brief, and Harry's new coldness made Ron shiver, but it was real. An apology and an acceptance all wrapped up in one clumsy gesture. "Thank you," Ron whispered. "You're welcome." Harry stepped back. "Now go eat something. You look terrible." Ron laughed wetly and wiped his eyes. "Yeah, okay, I'll see you around. We live in the same castle. Hard to avoid each other." Ron nodded and left. Harry stood alone in the empty classroom, thinking about judgment and mercy and the strange balance between them. The gift giver gave without asking. The shadow punished without hesitation. And Harry, somehow, had to be both. Risma's morning arrived 3 days later. Harry woke early, before anyone else in the dormitory, and slipped out to walk the empty corridors. The castle was quiet, most of the students having gone home for the holidays. Only a handful remained, those who had nowhere else to go. Like him, he ended up in the room of requirement, which had transformed itself into something that looked like a workshop. Wooden benches, tools, half-finished toys scattered across every surface. The sack was sitting in the center of the room, glowing faintly. Harry approached it and reached inside. His hand came out holding a list. Names, hundreds of them, written in glowing script that shifted and changed as he watched. Students at Hogwarts, teachers, people he'd never met, the naughty and nice list. He could feel it now, the weight of it. Not just names on paper, but judgments. Assessments of character. The culmination of every choice and action and thought that made a person who they were. Some of the names had gold beside them. Others had black. Most were somewhere in between, a mix of light and dark that reflected the complexity of human nature. Hermione Granger. Mostly gold, with streaks of silver for her occasional arrogance. Draco Malfoy. More gray than anything, a boy who had been taught wrong but wasn't yet truly corrupt. Neville Longbottom. Almost pure gold, a soul of remarkable kindness despite everything he'd suffered. Ron Weasley. Gray with gold emerging, a heart that was healing from its wounds. And Daphne Greengrass. Silver and ice and something that defied categorization. Not good or evil, just other. Like him. Harry set the list down and looked around the workshop. This was his inheritance, his responsibility, the work that had been passed down through millennia, waiting for someone who could carry it. He wasn't ready. He knew that. He had years of learning ahead of him, decades of practice before he could truly be what he was meant to be. But he had started, and that was enough. A knock at the door. Harry opened it to find Daphne standing in the corridor, wearing a dark green dress and a silver ribbon in her hair. "Merry Christmas," she said. "Merry Christmas." He stepped aside to let her in. "You're up early. Couldn't sleep." She looked around the workshop with interest. "This is new. The room made it. I think it's showing me what I'm supposed to do." Daphne walked among the benches, trailing her fingers over half-finished toys and tools. "A workshop. Like the legends. It feels right." Harry picked up a wooden soldier from one of the benches. It was unfinished, waiting to be completed. I think I'm supposed to make things. Gifts. Real ones, infused with magic and intent. That's a lot of work. I have time." He set the soldier down. "Centuries of it, probably. The gift giver doesn't age like normal people." Daphne was quiet for a moment. "Does that bother you?" "A little. It means watching everyone I care about grow old and die while I stay the same." Harry looked at his pale hands. "But it also means I have time to get things right. To learn from my mistakes. To maybe, eventually, become good at this." "You're already good at it." "I'm okay at it." "There's a difference." Daphne smiled. It was still rare, that expression, but it was getting more common. "I brought you something," she said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box wrapped in silver paper. Harry stared at it. "You got me a present. It's Christmas. That's what people do. I didn't get you anything. You saved the entire school from a demon 3 days ago. I think that counts." Quote. Harry took the box and opened it carefully. Inside was a ring. Silver, simple, engraved with a pattern of snowflakes and stars. "It's a focus," Daphne said. "I made it myself. It should help you channel your power more precisely, without the sack." Harry slipped the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly, and the moment it touched his skin, he felt something click into place. His power, always a wild storm inside him, suddenly became calmer. More controlled. "This is amazing," he said. "How did you?" "Research. Practice. A lot of trial and error." Daphne shrugged, but Harry could see the pride behind her mask. "The Greengrass family has certain talents with magical crafting. I just applied them." "Thank you." He looked at her. "Daphne, don't." She held up a hand. "Don't make this into something it's not. It's just a gift. From a friend. Is that what we are? Friends?" Daphne was quiet for a long moment. Her pale eyes studied his face, looking for something Harry wasn't sure she'd find. "I don't know what we are," she said finally. "But I know what I want us to be." "What's that?" "Together." She stepped closer, close enough that RRY could feel the warmth of her body against his eternal cold. "Whatever happens next, wherever your responsibilities take you, I want to be there. Not because I need you or because you need me, but because we're better together than apart." Harry thought about the future. About centuries of duty and judgment and gift-giving. About watching the world change while he stayed the same. It would be lonely. Impossibly lonely. Unless he had someone to share it with. "Okay," he said. Daphne blinked. Okay, let's be together. Whatever that means. However it works." He took her hand, her warm fingers against his cold ones. "I can't promise it'll be easy. I can't even promise it'll be safe. But I can promise I'll try." Daphne smiled again. Bigger this time. Almost a grin. "That's all I ask." They stood there for a while. hand in hand in the workshop that had been waiting 1,000 years for someone to fill it. Outside, snow was falling. Inside, something that might have been hope was growing. The Winter King had found his queen. And somewhere, in the cosmic balance of the universe, something shifted. The gift giver was complete. The shadow was at peace. And Christmas morning had never been brighter. The thaw came slowly. 3 weeks after the longest night, Hogwarts was still finding ice in unexpected places. Behind tapestries, inside suits of armor, frozen solid in the pipes, causing the plumbing to make strange gurgling sounds that echoed through the corridors at night. Harry felt responsible for every piece of it. He spent his mornings walking the castle, his new senses alert to the remnants of the battle. Every pocket of cold called to him, and he answered, drawing the ice back into himself like collecting scattered belongings. The process was slow and careful. Too fast, and the melting water would flood the corridors. Too slow, and the ice would spread again, feeding on the ambient magic that saturated these ancient walls. It was tedious work, but it was his work. His mess to clean up. The students who had stayed for the holidays watched him from a distance. They whispered when he passed, their voices carrying easily to his enhanced hearing. Did you see his eyes? They glow in the dark now. My cousin says he's not even human anymore. Says he's some kind of ice demon. Don't be stupid. He saved us. Whatever he is, he's on our side. Harry ignored them. Their wants pressed against his consciousness, a constant background hum of desires and fears and petty grievances. He'd gotten better at filtering it out, at building the mental walls that kept him sane. But it was exhausting. Everything was exhausting lately. He was standing in the third-floor corridor, his hand pressed against a patch of ice that had formed around a window frame, when he felt her approach. You missed breakfast again. Harry didn't turn around. Wasn't hungry. Daphne stopped beside him, her shoulder almost brushing his. She was wearing her usual robes, dark green with silver trim. Her blonde hair pulled back in its severe braid. She looked the same as she always had. Harry knew he didn't. You need to eat, she said. Whatever you've become, you still have a body. Bodies require maintenance. The cold sustains me. That's not how biology works. Harry finally looked at her. I'm not sure biology applies to me anymore. Daphne's pale eyes studied his face. He wondered what she saw there. The white hair that had replaced his black. The silver eyes with their swirling gold flecks. The shimmer under his skin that never quite went away, like frost caught in amber. He'd looked in a mirror once. 2 days after the battle. He hadn't done it again. You're still Harry, Daphne said. Am I? You're still the only person in this castle whose mind is quiet to me. That hasn't changed. She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm against his perpetual cold. Stop brooding and come eat something. Pomfrey's been asking about you. Harry let her pull him away from the window. The ice could wait. It always waited for him now. The Great Hall was sparsely populated at this hour. Most of the remaining students slept late during the holidays, enjoying the freedom from classes. A handful of teachers sat at the high table, nursing cups of tea and avoiding eye contact with Harry as he entered. He didn't blame them. He made people uncomfortable now. The cold that radiated off him. The ancient power that hummed beneath his skin. Even Dumbledore kept his distance, watching Harry with eyes that mixed respect and wariness in equal measure. Only Daphne seemed unaffected. She sat across from him at the Slytherin table, loading her plate with eggs and toast, acting like nothing had changed. Maybe for her, nothing had. Eat, she said, pushing a plate toward him. Harry picked up a fork. The food tasted like nothing to him now. Not bad, just absent. Like eating air. But he went through the motions because Daphne was watching and because some part of him still remembered being human. There's a meeting this afternoon, Daphne said between bites. Dumbledore wants to discuss what happens next. What happens next? With you. With your powers. With. She hesitated. With the war. Harry set down his fork. I'm not fighting in his war. I know. But he's going to ask anyway. The doors to the Great Hall opened. Professor McGonagall walked in, her face set in the severe expression she always wore, but Harry could feel the nervousness underneath. The want that radiated off her. For normalcy, for order, for things to make sense again. She stopped at their table. Mr. Potter, the headmaster requests your presence in his office at 2 o'clock. I'll be there. McGonagall nodded stiffly and walked away without another word. Harry watched her go. She'd been one of his favorite teachers before the change. Strict but fair, with a dry wit that he'd appreciated. Now she could barely look at him. She's afraid of you, Daphne said quietly. Everyone's afraid of me. Not everyone. Daphne met his eyes. I'm not. Maybe you should be. Maybe. She smiled slightly. But where's the fun in that? Harry almost laughed. Almost. I should go check on Ron, he said. Daphne's expression flickered. Is that wise? Probably not. But I need to. Before the meeting. Before everything else. I need to know he's okay. He was possessed by an ancient demon that used him to hurt people. He's not going to be okay for a long time. I know. Harry stood up. But he's still my friend. Or he was. And I owe him better than abandonment. Daphne was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. I'll come with you. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. She stood up and took his arm. Whatever happens, we face it together. Remember. Harry remembered. He remembered their conversation in the workshop, their hands intertwined, the promise they'd made. Together. Maybe that was the only thing that still made sense. The hospital wing was quiet. Most of the students who had been frozen during the battle had been released days ago. Their bodies had recovered quickly once Harry removed the ice. Their minds were another matter. Madame Palm. Frey had handed out dreamless sleep potions like candy and referred several students to the mind healers at St. Mungo's. Ron was in a private room at the back. Harry stopped outside the door, his hand hovering over the handle. He could feel Ron on the other side. The tangle of emotions that made up his former friend. Guilt and fear and shame, twisted together with something that might have been hope. Ready? Daphne asked. No. He pushed the door open anyway. Ron was sitting up in bed, staring out the window. He looked thinner than Harry remembered. Paler. The freckles that had always made high. Looked cheerful now stood out against his skin like spots of rust on snow. He turned when Harry entered, and his eyes went wide. Harry. Hey, Ron. The silence stretched between them. Harry could hear Ron's heartbeat, fast and irregular. Could feel his wants pressing against the walls of his mind. Forgiveness, understanding, the desperate need to undo what he'd done. You look different, Ron said finally. I know. I heard. People told me what happened. But seeing it, Ron swallowed hard. You really are him, aren't you? The Winter King. Father Christmas. Whatever they call it. I'm still Harry. Are you, though? Ron's voice cracked. Because the Harry I knew didn't have white hair and glowing eyes. The Harry I knew was just a kid, like me. Normal. Now you're. He gestured vaguely at all of Harry. This. Harry pulled up a chair and sat down beside the bed. The cold radiating off him made Ron shiver, but the redhead didn't pull away. I'm still the same person inside, Harry said. I still remember the train ride to Hogwarts. I still remember you being the first person who was nice to me who wasn't afraid. I still remember wanting to be your friend. And now things are complicated. Ron laughed bitterly. Complicated. Yeah, that's one word for it. They sat in silence for a while. Harry could hear students moving in the corridor outside, their once a distant hum. Could feel the ancient magic of Hogwarts pulsing through the walls. Could sense the approach of someone familiar, stopping outside the door to listen. Daphne. Giving them space but staying close. I'm sorry, Ron said eventually. For everything. For being jealous and stupid and letting that thing inside me. For almost getting everyone killed. I know you're sorry. That doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't. Harry met Ron's eyes. But it's a start. Ron looked away. I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not. Harry reached into the sack at his hip. His hand closed around something solid. Something that hummed with quiet magic. But I'm giving it anyway. He pulled out a chess set. It was beautiful, hand-carved from ice that wouldn't melt, each piece a masterwork of frozen detail. The king was a regal figure in flowing robes. The queen stood tall and fierce beside him. The knights rode horses made of crystalline snow. The pawns were bundled figures with scarves and mittens. Ron stared at it. What is this? Quote, a gift. Harry set the chess set on the bed beside Ron. I made it for you. The pieces are enchanted. They'll teach you as you play. Strategy. Patience. How to think 3 moves ahead instead of just one. I don't understand. Your problem was never that you were bad, Ron. It was that you were impatient. You wanted to be special right now, without putting in the work. You wanted recognition without earning it. Harry touched one of the knights, and it stirred under his finger, stamping its tiny hooves. These pieces will help. They'll teach you how to wait. How to plan. How to be the person you want to be instead of the person jealousy made you. Ron picked up the king piece. It was cold in his hand but not painfully so. As Harry watched, the piece seemed to whisper something. Too quiet for human ears. This is amazing, Ron breathed. How did you? I'm the gift giver now. This is what I do. Harry stood up. Use it. Learn from it. And when you're ready, if you still want to be friends. I do. Ron's voice was fierce. I do want that. More than anything. Then work for it. Harry moved toward the door. Earn it. Show me that the person you become is worth knowing. And if I can't, if I'm always going to be jealous and petty then you'll have failed. Harry looked back over his shoulder. But I don't think you will. The pieces don't lie, Ron. They see what you could be. And it's someone worth waiting for. He left before Ron could respond. Daphne was waiting in the corridor. That was kind, she said. It was necessary. Can't it be both? Quote. Harry thought about it. Maybe. I don't know anymore. Everything feels different now. The things that used to matter. He shook his head. It's hard to care about school rivalries and teenage drama when you can feel the wants of everyone in the castle pressing against your skull. Is that why you've been avoiding people? Partly. He started walking, and Daphne fell into step beside him. It's also just easier. Being alone. The cold doesn't bother me. The silence doesn't bother me. Everything else does. I bother you. No. He stopped and turned to face her. You're the exception. You've always been the exception. Why? Harry considered the question. He'd thought about it a lot over the past few weeks. Why Daphne, of all people? Why was she the only quiet place in his mind? I think it's because you don't want anything from me, he said finally. Everyone else, even the people who care about me, they want something. They want me to be normal. They want me to fight their wars. They want me to make them feel special by association. But you, I just want you to be you. Yes, that's not nothing. No. Harry reached out and touched her face. His fingers were cold against her cheek, but she didn't flinch. It's everything. They stood like that for a long moment. The castle was quiet around them, the ancient stones absorbing the cold that radiated from Harry's skin. Then Daphne stepped back. We should go. You have a meeting with Dumbledore. Right. Harry let his hand fall. The meeting. They walked in silence toward the headmaster's office. Harry could feel the weight of what was coming settling over him like a heavy cloak. This was it. The moment where he would have to choose. The war. Voldemort. The expectations of an entire world that had been waiting for a hero. Or his own path. His own purpose. The ancient responsibilities that had been passed down through millennia. He couldn't have both. He knew that now. The gargoyle leapt aside when they approached, revealing the spiral staircase to Dumbledore's office. I should probably go alone, Harry said. Probably. Daphne squeezed his hand. But I'll be here when you're done. Thank you. He climbed the stairs. Dumbledore's office looked the same as it always had. The whirring silver instruments. The sleeping portraits of former headmasters. The phoenix on its perch. Watching Harry with ancient, knowing eyes. But something was different. There were others in the room. Professor McGonagall stood by the window, her face stern. Professor Snape lurked in the corner. His dark eyes fixed on Harry with an expression that mixed hostility and something almost like respect. And in the center of it all, seated behind his desk, Albus Dumbledore waited his fingers steepled beneath his chin. Harry, the old wizard said. Thank you for coming. You didn't give me much choice. There's always a choice. Please, sit. Harry remained standing. What is this? An intervention? A conversation? Dumbledore's voice was calm. About the future. About your place in it. I already know my place. Do you? Dumbledore leaned forward. You're 11 years old, Harry. Whatever powers you've inherited, whatever transformations you've undergone, you're still a child. A child who has been thrust into circumstances beyond your control or understanding. I understand more than you think. Perhaps. Dumbledore's eyes were sad. But understanding and wisdom are not the same thing. And wisdom comes only with time. Harry felt his patience fraying. The cold in his blood was rising, making the temperature in the room drop. McGonagall shivered. Snape's breath came out in white clouds. Just say what you want to say, Professor. Very well. Dumbledore stood. Voldemort is not dead, Harry. The prophecy still exists. One of you must die at the hand of the other. Whatever else you've become, that truth remains unchanged. And you want me to fight him. I want you to fulfill your destiny. Harry laughed. It was a cold sound, nothing like the laugh he'd had before the change. My destiny. You mean the destiny you planned for me. The one where I'm your weapon against the dark. Your sacrificial lamb. Dumbledore's face tightened. That's not. I can see your heart, Professor. I can feel what you want. Harry's voice was steady, relentless. You want Voldemort dead. You want the war ended. And you're willing to use anyone and anything to make that happen. Including an 11-year-old boy who didn't ask for any of this. The room was silent. McGonagall looked horrified. Snape's expression was unreadable. The prophecy is real, Dumbledore said quietly. I don't doubt it, but prophecies can be interpreted many ways. And I'm not the person you think I am anymore. Harry met the old wizard's eyes. I'm not Harry Potter, the boy who lived. I'm the Winter King, the gift giver. I have responsibilities that stretch back millennia and duties that extend across the entire world. Quote, and what of your duty to the people who depend on you here? The students, the wizarding world that looks to you for hope. I'll protect them, all children, everywhere. That's my job now. The children of the world, wizard and muggle alike. Harry's voice softened slightly. But I won't fight your war, Professor. Voldemort is a human problem. Let humans deal with him. Dumbledore was quiet for a long moment. Harry could feel the struggle inside him. The desire to argue, to convince, to find some way to keep Harry bound to his plans. And underneath that, a grudging acceptance. You're truly lost to us, then, the headmaster said. I'm not lost. I'm just somewhere else now. Following a different path. Harry turned toward the door. I don't expect you to understand. But I hope you can accept it. And if Voldemort comes for you, if he decides that the prophecy requires your death regardless of your new nature. Harry paused with his hand on the door handle. Then he'll learn what it means to challenge the Winter King. He left the office without looking back. Daphne was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, just as she'd promised. How did it go? About as well as expected. Harry kept walking, and she fell into step beside him. Dumbledore wants me to fight Voldemort. I refused. He won't give up easily. I know, but there's nothing he can do. I'm beyond his control now. Beyond anyone's control. Harry stopped at a window and looked out at the grounds. Snow was falling gently, covering the damage from the battle in a blanket of white. I need to leave. Daphne went very still. Leave. The source of my power is in the north. The place where all the gift givers go to complete their transformation. I've been putting it off, but... He turned to face her. I can feel it calling to me. Every day the pull gets stronger. If I stay here too long, I'll lose myself. When? Soon. A few days at most. Daphne's face was carefully blank. Her silence was absolute, the way it always was when she was hiding something. I see, she said. Daphne, no, I understand. You have responsibilities, ancient ones, more important than a school or a war or... Her voice caught slightly, or anything here. Harry reached out and took her hand. Come with me, she blinked. What? Come with me, to the north, to wherever this path leads. He squeezed her fingers. I meant what I said on Christmas. Whatever happens, I don't want to face it alone. And you're the only person who makes the silence bearable. I'm not. I can't. Daphne shook her head. Harry, I'm just a student. I'm not a demigod or a winter spirit or whatever you've become. I'm just. You're the Ice Queen. Harry smiled slightly. That's what everyone calls you. Cold, remote, untouchable. But I know the truth. You're not cold. You're just quiet, like me. Being quiet isn't the same as being powerful. No, but being together is better than being alone. He cupped her face in his cold hands. I'm not asking you to be something you're not. I'm asking you to be with me. To help me figure out what I am and what I'm supposed to do. To be my partner. Daphne stared at him. Her pale eyes were wide, vulnerable in a way he'd rarely seen. What about my family? My education? My life? Bring what you want. Leave what you don't need. The North is vast, and there's room for everything that matters. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. Nothing about this is simple. Harry pressed his forehead against hers. But it's right. I can feel it. You belong with me, Daphne. The same way the cold belongs to winter. The same way the gift giver belongs to the solstice. She was quiet for a long moment. Harry could hear her heartbeat, slow and steady. Could feel the warmth of her breath against his cold skin. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll come with you. She pulled back slightly, meeting his eyes. But I have conditions. Name them. I want to finish my education. Not at Hogwarts, necessarily, but somewhere. I won't be an ignorant accessory to your power. Agreed. I want to maintain contact with my family. My sister especially. She's younger than me and she needs guidance. Agreed. And I want. She hesitated. I want this to be real. Not just convenience or necessity. If we're going to be together, I want it to mean something. Harry thought about that. About what it would mean to commit to someone, knowing he might live for centuries while she aged and died like any mortal. About the pain that would inevitably come. But also about the alternative. Centuries of solitude, an eternity of cold and silence with no one to share it. It means something, he said. I can't promise forever. I don't know what forever looks like for someone like me. But I can promise that right now, in this moment, you matter more to me than anything else in this castle. In this world. Daphne's lips curved in a small smile. That's enough. She kissed him. It was soft and warm and brief, just a touch of her lips against his cold ones. But it sent something through Harry that wasn't cold at all. Something that felt almost like hope. When do we leave? She asked when she pulled back. Tomorrow night, after the farewell feast. Then we have work to do. She took his hand and started walking. I need to pack, and write to my parents. And figure out how to explain to Tracy that I'm running off with the Winter King. You could just tell her the truth. The truth is insane. Nobody would believe it. They'll have to believe it eventually. Eventually isn't tomorrow. Daphne squeezed his hand. One thing at a time, Potter. One thing at a time. They walked through the castle together, making plans. Behind them, unseen, Dumbledore watched from a window high above. His face was sad but resigned. The boy who lived was gone. Something else had taken his place. And all the old wizard's plans had turned to ash. The farewell feast was a quiet affair. Only a handful of students remained in the castle, those who had nowhere else to go or no one who wanted them. Harry sat at the Slytherin table with Daphne, picking at food he couldn't taste while the conversations of others washed over him. Ron wasn't there. He'd been released from the hospital wing that morning and had gone straight to his dormitory. Harry had felt him from across the castle. The tangle of emotions as he unpacked the chess set and began his first game against the enchanted pieces. It was a start. Hermione had approached Harry earlier in the day, full of questions and theories and the desperate need to understand. He'd answered what he could and deflected what he couldn't, and she'd eventually retreated to the library to research on her own. She'd figure it out eventually. She always did. Dumbledore gave a short speech about the events of the solstice, sanitized for public consumption. A magical disturbance. A brave response by students and staff. No details about ancient powers or demon possession or the birth of a new god. Harry listened without really hearing. His mind was already elsewhere. Already feeling the pull of the North. Stronger than ever now that he'd decided to answer it. After the feast, he and Daphne climbed to the astronomy tower. The night was clear and cold. Stars blazed overhead, more vivid than Harry had ever seen them. The snow on the grounds glittered like scattered diamonds in the moonlight. Are you ready? Daphne asked. No. Harry looked out at the horizon. But I'm going anyway. That's very brave. Or very stupid. Can't it be both? Harry laughed. A real laugh, not the cold thing he'd been producing lately. You're good for me, you know that. I know. Daphne smiled. Someone has to keep your ego in check. Being the Winter King has gone to your head. Has it? Not yet, but it might, given a few centuries. She stepped closer and took his hand. Ready to fly. Harry had been practicing, learning to use his power for more than just freezing things. The cold was part of him now, and the cold belonged to the sky, to the wind, to the vast empty spaces between stars. He could feel it calling to him. The air, the height, the freedom. Hold on, he said. Daphne wrapped her arms around him. Harry closed his eyes and reached for the cold. It answered. Wind swirled around them, lifting them off the tower floor. Not violently, not dangerously. Gently, like a parent lifting a child. Harry could feel the currents of air, could sense the paths between them, could see the invisible highways that crisscrossed the sky. They rose. The castle fell away beneath them. The grounds became a patchwork of white and dark, the lake a mirror reflecting the stars. The mountains on the horizon grew closer, then passed below. They were flying, not on brooms or carpets or any kind of vehicle. Just the two of them, held aloft by the winter wind, traveling faster than any mortal conveyance could manage. Daphne's arms tightened around him, but not from fear. From wonder. This is incredible, she breathed. This is just the beginning. They flew north, over Scotland, over the sea, over lands that had no names and places that existed only in legend. The cold grew sharper as they traveled, but Harry barely felt it. This was his element, his domain. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time worked differently up here, in the spaces between. Eventually, Harry felt something ahead. A presence, a place, home. The workshop materialized out of the northern lights. It wasn't a building, not exactly. It was more like a fold in reality. A pocket of space that existed alongside the normal world but separate from it. Mountains of ice surrounded it, glittering in colors that had no names. The sky above was a constant dance of aurora. Green and pink and purple fire writing messages in languages older than humanity. And in the center, at the heart of it all, the workshop waited. Harry landed on a platform of crystalline snow. Daphne stumbled slightly as her feet touched solid ground, but he caught her easily. We're here, he said. Where is here? The North Pole, or something like it. The place where the gift givers have always come to complete their transformation. Harry looked around at the impossible landscape. My predecessor lived here for centuries. Building toys, making gifts, earning the names and wants of every child in the world. And now it's yours. Now it's ours. They walked toward the workshop together. The doors opened as Harry approached, recognizing him, welcoming him. Inside was everything Harry had imagined and nothing like it at all. Workbenches lined the walls, covered in tools and materials and half-finished creations. Shelves stretched to impossible heights, filled with gifts wrapped in every color imaginable. The air smelled of pine and cinnamon and something older, something that might have been magic itself. And waiting for them, standing in a circle around a central fireplace, were the ancient elves, not the bark-skinned warriors Harry had met in the Forbidden Forest. These were different, smaller, rounder, with bright eyes and pointed ears and expressions that radiated warmth despite the cold. The original elves, the ones who had served the gift givers since the beginning. One of them stepped forward. It was ancient, its face lined with centuries of experience. But its eyes were sharp and bright. Welcome home, Winter King, it said. Its voice was like bells in the wind. We have been waiting for you. Waiting for me, for 1,000 years, since the last gift giver passed on his power. We have kept the workshop running. Maintained the lists. Prepared the gifts that could not be delivered without a master to guide them. The elf smiled. And now you are here. The cycle begins again. Harry looked around at the workshop. At the elves. At Daphne, standing beside him with wonder in her eyes. This was his destiny. Not the one Dumbledore had planned for him. Not the one the prophecy had predicted. A different one. Older. Larger. I don't know how to do this, he said. No one does, at first. The ancient elf chuckled. But you will learn. We will teach you. And you. It looked at Daphne. You will help him. The gift giver has always needed a partner. Someone to share the burden. Someone to keep him grounded in humanity even as he transcends it. Daphne's hand found Harry's. I can do that, she said. Then let us begin. The elf gestured toward the fireplace, where a massive book sat open on a pedestal. The lists await. The gifts must be prepared. And there is much work to be done before the next solstice. Harry walked toward the book. The pages were covered in names, millions of them, written in a script that shifted and changed as he watched. Each name was connected to a want, a need, a hope that pulsed with quiet urgency. The children of the world, waiting for someone to answer them. Harry placed his hand on the page. The names sang to him, spoke to him, told him their stories. A boy in Japan who wanted his parents to stop fighting. A girl in Brazil who wanted to learn to read. A child in Russia who wanted to be warm, just once. Just for a little while. Millions of voices, millions of needs, millions of chances to make a difference. Harry smiled. Let's get to work. The story doesn't end there. Stories like this never really end. They just pause, take a breath, and continue in ways that readers never see. Harry Potter, the Winter King, spent the next several years learning his craft. He studied the ancient texts of the gift givers. He practiced the magic of creation and judgment. He traveled the world, delivering gifts to those who needed them, appearing and disappearing like a dream. Daphne stayed by his side, his partner in all things. She never became immortal like him, but the magic of the workshop extended her years far beyond normal. She became the Ice Queen in truth, not just in name. Her cold heart finally finding a home in the endless winter of the North. They returned to Hogwarts once, years later, when Ron Weasley's eldest daughter was sorted into Slytherin. Harry delivered a gift that night. A snow globe that showed the Weasley family together and happy, a reminder that some things were worth fighting for. Ron had become the man Harry had hoped he would be. Patient, strategic, kind in ways he'd never managed as a boy. The chess set had done its work. Hermione had solved the mystery of Harry's power, of course. She'd written a 12-volume treatise on the subject, which became the definitive text on pre-Hogwarts magical traditions. She'd also married Ron, which Harry thought was perfect in a strange sort of way. Dumbledore passed eventually, as all mortals do. Harry attended the funeral, standing in the back, feeling the grief of everyone there and sharing in it despite everything. The old wizard had been manipulative and secretive and had tried to use Harry as a weapon. But he'd also been kind, in his way, and he'd genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. The night after the funeral, Harry left a gift on Dumbledore's grave. A portrait, enchanted with memories of everyone the headmaster had helped over his long life. The good he'd done, separate from the wars and politics and greater goods. Even flawed people deserved to be remembered at their best. Voldemort came, eventually. He tracked Harry to the north, convinced that destroying the boy who lived was still his destiny. Harry met him on the frozen plains outside the workshop and offered him a choice. "You can turn back," Harry said. "Leave this place. Find a new purpose. The prophecy doesn't have to define you." Voldemort laughed and raised his wand. What followed wasn't a battle. Battles require opponents of roughly equal strength. This was a correction. Harry reached into Voldemort's chest and pulled out every gift the Dark Wizard had ever denied himself. Love, connection, the simple joy of being accepted. He laid them out in the snow, glittering fragments of a life that could have been, and let Voldemort see what he'd thrown away. Then he let the cold take him. Not a killing cold, a preserving cold. Voldemort was frozen solid, trapped forever in a moment of perfect understanding, surrounded by the gifts he'd rejected. Harry left him there, a monument to choices and consequences. The prophecy was fulfilled. One of them had died at the hand of the other. Just not in the way anyone had expected. Years passed. Decades. Centuries. Harry watched the world change from his workshop in the north. Magic faded from public memory, becoming myth and legend. Technology rose to fill the gap, and humanity spread across the stars in ways that would have seemed impossible to his 11-year-old self. But children remained constant. Every year, on the longest night, Harry gathered his gifts and flew out into the world. He visited every child who needed him, leaving exactly what they required. Not always toys, sometimes courage, sometimes hope, sometimes just the knowledge that someone, somewhere, cared enough to remember them. The gift giver endured, the Winter King remained, and in a workshop at the top of the world, surrounded by elves and magic and the accumulated wisdom of millennia, Harry Potter finally found the peace he'd been searching for all along. Not in defeating enemies or fulfilling prophecies or meeting expectations. In giving, in sharing, in the simple, profound act of making the world a little bit better, one gift at a time. That's what the winter was always about. That's what Santa Claus had always known. And now, so did Harry. On the last page of this story, we find Harry and Daphne sitting together in the workshop, watching the northern lights dance across the sky. They're older now, in the way that eternal beings measure age, their lives measured in experiences rather than years. Daphne's hair has gone silver, matching Harry's white, and her face shows the gentle lines of a life well lived. But her eyes are the same. Still pale, still sharp, still seeing through every mask Harry tries to wear. "What are you thinking about?" she asks. "The beginning," Harry says. "Privet Drive, the Dursleys, that first letter. Do you regret it?" Harry considers the question. He's had a long time to consider it, actually. Centuries of quiet nights and contemplative mornings. "No," he says finally. "I don't regret what I became. I regret how it happened. I regret the people who got hurt along the way. But this," he gestures at the workshop, at the elves, at everything they've built together. "This is what I was always meant for. I just didn't know it yet." "The gift giver," Daphne says. "The Winter King. The boy who lived to give." Something like that. She leans against him, her warmth a contrast to his eternal cold. "I love you," she says. "I've loved you since that first day in the Slytherin common room, when you fell out of the fireplace covered in soot and looked at me like I was the only quiet place in the world. You were." Harry puts his arm around her. "You still are." They sit like that for a long time, watching the aurora paint the sky in colors that have no names. Tomorrow there will be work to do. Lists to check, gifts to prepare, children to remember. But tonight, in this moment, there is only this. Two people who found each other in the cold and built something warm. A gift giver and his queen. A story that started with a boy under the stairs and ended with a king among the stars. Not bad, Harry thinks. Not bad at all. The northern lights shimmer. The workshop hums with quiet magic. And somewhere in the distance, a child makes a wish. Harry smiles. Time to get back to work.